Hello, everyone, to the W Podcast, episode 2 with your friendly neighborhood healers. I'm Wolvy, and SaucyJay is here with me. Our main topic today is going to be Mythic Plus, but before we get started with this, we already have some life changes on the servers announced by Blizzard, and there is some healing stuff in there as well. So let's go briefly through them and discuss them, see if they're interesting. I guess we can start with the Restoration Druid, which gets their Swiftman healing increased by 25%. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one. I mean, I do PvP. It is this is not limited just to PvE, so that's kind of nice. But having two Swift men's could be interesting. For Mythic Plus, did some keys last week, but not very high. I think I did a couple tens, and that was it. And it felt fine. That was before the buff. So to get a 25% bump on Swift men feels kind of nice. Outside of that, I think it's okay. I think Resto's in a good place. I think that's fine. I don't know how it's going to impact raid though. You have any thoughts on that?
No, I haven't seen many druids in raid, to be honest. Not sure what's up there. But the Swiftman definitely nice increase because one of the weaknesses of the rest druid is the spot healing. So that is going to help there, but Swiftman is not something that you spam, like let's say healing search on the shaman or something similar. So that's going to help a little bit, but it's not going to change the play style. So I'm still not a fan because if you end up having to spam regrowth at somebody, that just feels bad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you're talking about in Mythic Plus, or
yeah,
that's
yeah. In
Mythic
Mythic
Plus
Plus,
focus.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't PvP almost at all, so I can't say
Well,
how it is there,
between
but
raid, yeah, between raid and Mythic Plus, how do you feel? Because
yeah,
my opinion, real quick, raid, I love Druid and raid, and I don't spot heal, so I don't think it's impactful in
yeah.
raid for Swissmen. For Mythic Plus, I've never really felt like Resto Druid. I don't know how many keys you've done, but it's annoying. It's the APMs on Resto Druid is the most annoying out of all the healers. I can only do like one or two keys. I'm old, so after like two keys on Resto Druid, my hands are screaming at me because it's like every global, it's something.
Yeah.
So when I do it like that, I don't feel the need to have to often do spot healing unless somebody did something really bad. If you're plugging, that's quite often. So I think pug friendly, this is amazing for that. But if you're in a coordinated group, like when I run with the guild, I don't think it's going to be a big difference.
I see, but I book all of my keys, so there's always something going wrong, and I'm just spamming regrowths to whoever messed up, and that feels bad because there's nothing you can do. Like even if you play the cat form hero talents, even if you play the other hero talents where you can cast in
Yeah.
caster form and you have those instant starfalls, etc. I can't even send them in because, as you said, every global I have to fix somebody's mistake, and for druid it's really bad if you have to spam regrowth. So it's a good change, but for me, especially in Mythic Plus, I think there needs to be something else there to accommodate a little bit for people making mistakes. For raid, I've actually never been a fan of druid healing in raid. It's a little bit degenerate. You're not spreading the hearts basically mindlessly, and then something happens. You press a button, they heal, and that's it. But as I said, I haven't seen many druids. We don't have a resto druid in our guild, so I don't even know how they perform compared to everybody else. But yeah, it's a change. They're looking into it. To be honest, this is what the fifth buff they're getting now
Yeah.
since the start.
Yeah.
So that tells you a lot. If something
Poor
is getting
druids.
buffed 5 times in a row and there's no nerfs
Poor
and anything,
druids.
then yeah, poor druids.
Poor druids.
All right, so there are some interesting buffs to the DPS classes. I guess we can stop on the Monk Mistweaver very quickly, increasing the damage for the Conduit of the Celestials. This one is
Yeah.
also a little bit weird to me because I do a lot of damage on the monk. Like I play it regularly. It does more damage than my shaman often, which has like higher item level gear. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure why this happens, but I mean I welcome it. I would be fine doing more damage.
Yeah, for me, I think it's like, hey, at the higher levels, right? It seems like Blizzard tries to accommodate for the top tier, and they try to keep everybody happy, but you can never really do that. Higher end keys, healer has to do damage and discipline. If you can't keep up with a disc priest, then it's like what am I supposed to do, right? And so I think when I see like the what we're gonna talk about in a few seconds with Shaman, and then here with Mistweaver, to do more damage, be able to keep up with, I don't know, I guess top end discs are doing like 600k sustained damage, um, which is a lot. So I see it's, and that the other thing with your disc priest is like your damage is healing, so you kind of get the benefit of the both. Whereas with Mistweaver, there's some of that. Conduit of the Celestials, that's the one that like the thing bounces around. Is that one? Which one is that?
No, that's your main hero talent skill that you channel for a second, and it heals and it does damage and it provides the shields, all of those things.
Oh, so it does. It has a dual purpose. Okay, that's
Yeah,
cool. I
yeah.
haven't played much with Mistweaver this season, so
Yeah. Well, the damage of this specific skill was, I don't think, was amazing. So buffing that is fine. I don't think it's going to be a huge buff overall, but it's just interesting to me that they're going into that direction. And honestly, I don't care if they can keep up with Disc Priest because this is irrelevant in low keys. People are actually not
yeah,
playing Disc
true.
Priest in low keys, so
Yep.
there's no one to compete with. But I'll scroll down very quickly because the Shaman changes for Restoration. They're buffing the Farseer damage for the Ancestors, Chain Lightning and Lava Burst. I guess the same thing. The Shaman, though, this is specific to one of the hero talents, and everybody's playing Totemic because it's very easy compared to Farseer. From my personal experience, you can get similar output with both hero talents. Like, it doesn't matter if you play Totemic or Farseer, but Totemic is so smooth, man. Like, it just flows. It's so
Yeah.
easy. So I think the main reason that people are avoiding Farseer is not the throughput, be it damage or healing. It's more of a, okay, I have to press that many more buttons. I have to maintain two more things than compared to Totemic. So maybe that is the main reason people are not playing it. Buffing the damage, is that nice? Yeah. Is it going to help to get more people to play it? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, I've played quite a few games with Shaman. I think I'm 2,500 on Shaman, a little over 2,500, and I, don't know why I would go, because we play a ton of classes, right? It's like, why would you go back when Totemic is so smooth? It's so easy. It's comfortable. You have all these, like, why would you
Well,
do
I
it?
think
I
they're
don't.
trying to bring up the hero talents that are underperforming, whatever that means,
Yeah.
because I don't think Farseer is underperforming. But um, I mean, that's a nice change, but I don't think that's gonna bring it up. That's
Yeah.
not the way to do it. If that's
Yeah.
what you want to do, because we're guessing here. Yeah.
The priest one was interesting.
So there's a Holy Priest buffs, which I think is nice. The Holy Words, Serenity, and Sanctify. Maybe that's going to help a little bit with the AoE healing, specifically the second one, because this is why
Yeah.
I
Sanctify.
don't like Holy Priest in Mythic Plus specifically. In raid, they're pumping. The
Yeah.
halos are doing insane
Yeah.
amounts of healing.
Crazy.
But
Yeah.
the halo is not enough to carry you in an M plus. So needing something extra there to do AoE healing is always nice. And maybe this is going to help exactly in that direction.
Serenity makes no sense to me. It's already a huge heal. I
Yeah.
don't see what 25% is going to really do there. Sanctify, honestly, I'd rather see 50% Sanctify, 0% Serenity to be good.
Yeah. I'll be fine with that. I'll be
Yeah, because
fine with that.
Sanctify doesn't. It feels like it doesn't. The only reason I do it is for CDR. That's literally the only reason I do it, or to get a bigger heal on my heal. It feels so unimpactful that I just do it for maintenance on cooldown reduction and getting a bigger heal.
Yeah.
So it's the only reason I press it.
Well, those are nice changes, though. We can agree on that.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
moving into the right direction because I think Holly is one of the worst represented healers right now in Mythic Plus, along with Druid. But we'll have a chart later. And no changes for Disc, which I'm actually content with that because Disc is a very specific type of healer that I know you play it. I actually play a lot too lately. I enjoy the play style. But that's not something that you do in PUGs. It blasts in high keys, but the game there is completely different than what you and I play. So
yeah,
it wouldn't make sense, I guess, to nerf it. It wouldn't make sense to buff it, so it's not on the list.
yeah. I think I could agree with that. I think I was surprised that there wasn't some minor buffs. But I'm sorry. minor nerfs on the damage. Some of the damage just feels incredible, and the healing is just insane. It's really, even on the pugs I'm doing, I'm not having a problem getting invites, and it's blasting, and it feels really good. So it's nice to see the damage I'm doing. Most of the time, I'm doing more than a tanks, unless it's like a warrior or a prop pally that's just actually pushes buttons. And even then, I'm keeping up. It feels really good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So those are the changes. I guess we can jump on the main topic for today, which is going to be how your M plus season has been going so far. And from there, I guess we can jump into the minor topics.
Yeah.
So yeah, how is the season going for you? How much are you playing? Are you enjoying it? And what problems are you seeing?
Yeah, I know at the beginning of before the season started, I had a tier list of like what I was gonna play, and I was all in on Resto Druid, and then I had like my
Yeah.
priests kind of like next, and then it was like I wanted to play Warlock, and I kind of went with that pretty quickly. I did get the pre-launch, so I think I have like 18 max level characters at this point, multiple priests, multiple warlocks, multiple druids, multiple um, but all in all, I haven't really started to push, and this is the first week where I finally felt something where I was like, okay, I want to push. So I did Warlock, I think, to like 2300. Got my Druid to like 2100. Switched, played Rogue, got it to like 2K. Shaman, I jumped on it and had fun doing Totemic and pushed it to 25. But I was just having more fun doing a bunch of Hunter. So I bounced around a lot. And then I started, one of my friends has been asking me to do some PvP. And so they wanted me to play disc. So I've been doing more disc. And I was like, it feels good. Feels really strong. I want to do Mythic keys with it. So I leveled another priest, Night Elf priest, and just started blasting. And all pug. I didn't link my IO, so they can't see that I'm 2600 or whatever. And just have been pugging and doing all the twos, all the threes, all the fours. And so now I'm up to like 2400. I'm in a weird place right now in the Discord. It's like I'm spamming eights for the gilded crests, but I still need to up. I need to do like fours through sevens to get some of my other pieces that I don't really want to do them because it's the same length of time. But even on the pieces that I'm getting in the eights, I need those crests to upgrade them. So it's really a funky place to be. And there's no way I'm going to downgrade the gilded crests for the lower crests.
Yeah, that's not a good
Um,
strategy.
no, so it's kind of like it feels like really bad homework. I didn't do any delves. I did do a bunch of PvP on it at first because it's just so easy to get 610s in PvP for me because I do PvP. So I just did like 2 hours of PvP and got a bunch of conquest and got a bunch of 610 item level crafted gear, which helped a lot with Valor Stones and some of the early gearing. But now I'm in this weird place. But all in all, I feel good. I'm gonna push for 3K on my priest. I will say I don't have to 100% pug it because I'm a GM, co-GM of a guild that is Mythic Guild, and we have multiple 3K players. So, and they always want to play with me, and I'm just like, no, I want to pug. I just like the pug, the pug
Mhm.
life. There's something with like not the ease. There's something with going through the challenge, making myself better, not playing with the best players. What can I do better to, augment some of their missteps? It kind of brings attention to because my thoughts is like when you play with good players, you don't have to play as well, and sometimes that's a downside. It's a downfall for yourself, right? But when you're playing with kind of lesser skilled or lesser experienced people, it kind of makes you pay more attention to your abilities, your awareness, boss timers, positions, things like that. So I do enjoy the pug life, and yeah, that's where I'm at. So I think I'm gonna push priest to 3K as disc. Looking
Yeah,
forward to that.
I agree there. Like on a high key, if it's a good group, you can basically fall asleep if you're not pushing like very high
Especially,
keys. And then when you're doing pugs, if it's like four, six, something like that, you're always on your toes because somebody's eating the next fronto, and it's your job to save them. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I guess you're playing a lot of ults. I do the same. I'm trying to get all the healers to at least 2500. I have a three maybe done already. And I guess we can start from there. But uh, I think that when you're running your dungeons, and it doesn't matter if you're in your main, if you're in your old, you're basically always farming the wrong quests because of that tiered system where you have tiers in the gear and you have different types of quests. And it doesn't matter how you end up there. Like if you have that one good piece that you actually want to spend crests to and upgrade it, and you're doing low keys, you're not getting the gilded crests, and then it becomes kind of the opposite. You get the good gear, you upgrade it, but then you have those lower item level pieces, and you don't have the bad crests now. So I think that's a huge problem, and also the Valor Stones is something that's obnoxious. I don't think that should be in the game at all because they're either you have 2,000 of them, as I do on my Shaman right now, and there's absolutely nothing that I can do with them. If I get to upgrade a piece, I do a few dungeons, and they're capped again. But when I needed them, and when I need them on my oaths, there's no easy way to farm Valor Stones, right? Like what are the options? There's a quest there. Not all the world quests gives you Valor Stones, right? But let's say there's a quest that gives you Valor Stones. It gives you 20, and I need 150 to upgrade my piece. So what am I supposed to go and do? Like 10 world quests? Like there's probably not 10 world quests that give you Valor Stones whatsoever. So you're either starved, and the Valor Stones is what's preventing you to upgrade your gear, even if you have the crests, or it doesn't matter if they're there, because you have 2,000 and now you're wasting them. So from that perspective, I think that Valor Stones could just be removed. I don't think anyone's gonna say anything about it. It would be nice if somebody's actually using Valor Stones regularly and they enjoy them. Let us know in the comments below, because I'll be interested. What is the situation? What is the corner case where that happens? And then when we get to the crests, even with the crests, and I would also allude that to the gear, because the other kind of bottleneck when you're gearing old specifically, it's very slow because you can get some hero pieces from the dungeons and from the raid, but the mythic track pieces you can only get basically once per week, right? If you're not on your main, if you're not killing bosses, etc., you get that one shot in the vault, which could be disappointing because you can get a piece that you already have or something that's really bad, right? So that process is very slow, and unfortunately, there was an interview with Ian where he said, yeah, we're kind of happy how the crest system works. And, we just need to clear up a little bit the namings, which are horrible, by the way, but that's a different topic. And then we'll be fine. However, I think that something needs to be done because it's not, that system is not enjoyable at all. The only thing that I kind of like is the fact that right now, gearing your main is not as easy as previous seasons, right? So I'm still not at the cap of being able to upgrade every single piece. Like I need 1 or 2 more weeks to do that, right? So that is a little bit longer. Maybe that's something positive. But on all of my oaths, it feels horrible. And I have this idea where instead of having first the different types of crests and then having the different tracks of gear, what would be if you the item level drops for a certain piece, it drops at certain item level, and you're allowed to upgrade it only, let's say, 4, 5, or 6 times, right? So it doesn't matter what the track of the piece is, you're only allowed to upgrade it that number of times. So that's going to remove the tiers, the tracks of the pieces, right? And you can even accommodate something with the same way with the crests. And if they're kind of afraid that people are going to explode this and upgrade all their gear in week 1, you can implement some kind of caps. Let's say if you upgrade a piece of gear with crests once or twice, it heats up, so you're not allowed to upgrade it, until it's cooldown, which could take like a week, right? So I think there's better ways to approach the system, which is first going to make it easier to understand, because if you present that system to a new player with all the track pieces and the crests and the different types, their head is just going to blow up. Like I needed to watch a few videos when they first introduced it just to grasp the concept of this. So that is going to make it easier to understand. And then I think, let's say you don't have the track pieces. It's just one type of gear and you can upgrade it any number of a certain number of times. Then you can actually open up, like it would matter if you do it on a +10 or a +9, right? Because you can probably get it to drop with 3 item levels higher, but the difference is
Yeah.
not going to be that huge. And the items that you get, you can also get them relatively high compared to what you're going to be getting in the vault, right? But it will make more sense, and maybe you can open it to like, maybe that's too much, but you can get higher gear to drop in like 11s, 12s, etc. If you look into it from the rate perspective, the later bosses can drop items that are few item levels higher, right? So that would make sense to progress them and fire them, etc. So yeah, I don't know what you think about this, but in my mind, the system needs to change, and this is just my take on this. But having no tracks is and you can introduce some kind of bottlenecks and cap everything, but having no tracks and no different types of crests, I think is going to be a huge win.
Yeah, I don't like the two currency system. I don't think it makes a ton of sense. I don't understand the logic of it. I don't mind the upgrade paths in the sense of that's a mechanic. What I don't like is, look, if you play a bunch of alts and I think on my disc priest I did a 10 at like 614 or 612. I timed it. It was a guild run, and there was 2 of us that were under geared, and the other 3 were pretty well geared. But I healed it. I was the healer in that, and I was able to heal it. Obviously, everybody's stopping things and kicking, doing the right thing. But if you have the skills and the capabilities, or I'll even give you a better example. Like right now, I do an 8. If I get a piece of gear from an 8, I shouldn't have to go back to a 7, a 6, or a 5 to upgrade it, right? If I get it in an 8, I should be able to stay in an 8 to upgrade that piece higher instead of going back down a tier.
That's a
I
good
think they
take.
do it like that to, like, I don't know, to make you go back and do low keys, but it's like I don't understand. So I'm okay with the tiers, and if they could fix the naming and all that, but just make it so that there's not this backwards loop where you have to go backwards to do things. If you have the skill to get the gear at a higher level, you should be able to start upgrading it at that level if you continue to run those keys. I don't get why I'm doing 8s and I got like 7 or 8 pieces in my bags that I can't upgrade because I don't have those ruined crests or whatever they are.
Yeah.
Like and now I'm dreading going back and because I'm stuck. My item level's stuck now at like 619, and I could go to a 10, but it's hard to get invites to those because my item level, and I don't have my main linked on purpose, right? I could just easy do it and they'll see it and do it, but I don't want to go through that, right? I want to go through the experience as just a brand new user, you know what I mean? Brand new
Yeah.
player or whatever. I don't want them to know I have mains that have maybe higher IO. Um, I, but I'm stuck then in the meantime,
Yeah.
which is it's really unfortunate.
I think my main point is that as long as you have those tracks where gear drops in different tracks, and as long as you have those different crests, you can try to fine tune this. So maybe you're gonna get these crests on that item level or in that level of the dungeon, Mythic Plus key, etc. Right? But as long as you have those tracks, there's a difference. There's a gap between those tracks. I don't think you'll be able to tune it so everybody's happy, right? You're always going to be doing some content, and that content is not going to be dropping what you need. I don't think you can fine tune it to that degree that everything is perfect. So from that perspective, that's why I'm kind of like advocating for removing those tiers and those gaps that are being created by them. Because otherwise you'll be stuck into that loop of people telling you, "Oh, you need to lower this threshold or make it so
Mhm.
that this drops that crest." And I don't see how you get away from this unless you remove, the different types, the different tiers.
And that happened, right? You didn't get gilded until 9th,
Yeah. So
and
they
then
lowered
and
it.
then they
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what
because
what are you
people
gonna do
were
next
really
season?
upset about it.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
people are not
exactly.
happy. Lower it again,
No,
like it doesn't make
yeah,
sense. Since
yeah,
we're on the gearing topic, there was actually a very hot take by Grau who was saying you can actually introduce dinars or whatever the type of things is that you can buy gear with, which Blizzard doesn't want to do. But then why not do it late in the season, right? Because Blizzard is afraid that you're gonna get all the best gear in the beginning, etc. But now we've been here for a while, and I've
yeah.
been playing my main like a lot, and I'm still missing some best items, right? And it's not one or two. Like I'm using stuff. I'm not even gonna mention what happens if you switch your spec to something else, but that's a different topic. So, um, for example, trinkets and things like that, even if they're for Mythic Plus, right? I would like to be able to get them in Mythic track instead of being a hero track. So if they don't like the dinars being a thing in the beginning, because people can easily get gear they want, maybe like late in the season when the season is already stalled a little bit and people are playing less because they achieve their goals, etc. Maybe they can do something there. And that is also going to allow you to get another piece of gear on, let's say, Mythic track currently on your ults, so you can a little bit speed up the process of getting the good gear. What's
Yeah.
your take on that? And do you have like a better
So
suggestion?
yeah, so if you draw out the main reason there's some of this this bottlenecking, in my opinion, is mythic raids, right? Blizzard knows that guilds like Liquid or Method or all the Echo, all the Limit, all the I don't know Liquid. It used to be Liquid, right? Whatever. They are insane, right? They'll get 6 split runs, they'll do the keys, and 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 that's what I think Blizzard's trying to avoid, right? And so, going to your point, after Hall of Fame is closed, just open it up. I mean, that's where most of the we want to curtail these guilds from like overly killing their players to get the highest gear for mythic rating. So let's intentionally bottleneck or gate the gear acquiring so that it's a fair race, because not everybody can do 15. They don't have $250,000 that they could spend on gear, and doing all these split runs. So let's kind of bounce it down a bit. So I think, to your point, after the Hall of Fame, which if you don't know Hall of Fame is, I know you do, but maybe some of the viewers watching, usually it's like the top 200 guilds that kill all of the mythic raid bosses, um, get into this Hall of Fame thing. I don't think it's officially, and is it officially so like
They closed
Blizzard?
it last week, I think.
They did. Okay, so they
Yeah.
they are now endorsing it. It didn't used to be like a Blizzard thing. It was like a outside of Blizzard thing. I
No,
guess now they're
I don't know if they're officially tracking it themselves, but it was when the Hall of Fame was filled, then they would open cross server rating, which is
okay.
not a thing anymore.
Okay.
Like you can cross server raid
Yeah,
right
do it
now
now.
as well, but
Yeah,
they were actually looking for that Hall of Fame to fill up in order to open the cross room rating. So they
that
were
makes sense.
definitely aware of it and using it.
Yeah. So I think, once that's achieved, once they close the Hall of Fame, just do it. Open it up, bust it open, let people have fun on alts, let other people that maybe don't have alts but have mains that want very cool gear, and it's the end of the season. Like, let them pump up and do the thing. Like, why still a bottleneck it? I don't
Yeah, and
understand.
I'll just add to this. It's not just about the rates and getting stuff there. Even now on my main, I am pushing keys now. Like I'm done farming. I don't want to be farming gear now. I just want to be
Yeah.
trying to
Yep.
to be able to test my skill to the next level. And
Yep.
I'm just handicapped if I don't have all the best gear. And it's not like I didn't play this character, right?
Yeah.
I'm at like very high item level. I'm almost 3K IO, so just let me blast and let me see how far I can get. I had fun
Yeah.
gearing and farming all the items, and I'm still doing that on my oats. But at least on my main, let me have the gear. Let me send it and see where I can take it. Right?
Here's a hot take. Take the people that are redesigning the PvP and move them over to Mythic Plus, because I got to tell you, like right now, Solo Shuffle is doing good. Battleground Blitz is doing good. Very, very popular. Uh, right now, I can send honor from any of my characters to another one. Valor Stones, right? Why can't I send Valor Stones? Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, hit me for 20% of it, but let me send Valor Stones to an alt. They're just racked up. I have 3 characters that are capped at 2K. I can't do anything with it. Why
Exactly.
can't I send it? But I could send honor to new characters so they can buy gear. Right now, Valor's open, and I can buy boxes, and I could send those boxes to alts, and they get high-end PvP gear as soon as they log in, right? Log in, open all the gear. Yeah, it's random, but it's gear. Why can't those kind of concepts kind of happen in PvE. I don't understand. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
and it's really convenient as a PvP player. That's so nice to be able to like level a hunter, have a bunch of valor and gear ready to go, and day one. It's nice.
Yeah, yeah, and they should definitely think about it because now that you said that on my main, the lower crests. Okay, I'm still using the gilded crests there, right? But the lower crests are just piling. I can't use them, right? So and those are the crests that I need on my odds that I'm currently gearing. So even if it's like the ratio 90 to 15 that you get to trade
Yeah.
them, if I can buy those in their warbound and I can send them to olds that they can use to upgrade the
Big.
gear, that's gonna be pog, you know, because I farm those
Yeah.
crests. It's not like
Yeah.
it's a free currency, right? I did the
Yeah.
dungeons, I got them at
Yeah.
the
You did
end.
the work.
Yeah,
Yep.
so let me use them even if I'm losing some currency because there's nothing I can do with them on my main. Um, so yeah, that's definitely something that they should probably think a little bit about. And
Yeah.
since we're talking about gearing, let's use this to jump to the next topic as well. But what is your take on delves, and how much delves did you do in order to get gear for your tunes, be it for PvP or PvE?
Yeah, it was only for PvE. Maybe the first 2 weeks of the game, I really pushed to get all the eights, fill up the vaults, try to get, I would run it with some of the guildies that, were doing their bountifuls or, just needed help with their healer or tank, in hopes that I would get a map so I can get a hero piece. Once I got enough gear, I don't go in. Even on alts, I just, you can't do it as a healer unless you go with other people, or I can't. A hunter I could do it, a warlock I could do it, tanks I can do it, but outside of that, um, it's not enjoyable. Um, so I kind of avoid them at this point. I get that for some player types it's probably amazing, but for me, I avoid it at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I'm still doing it on like low level odds that I'm just starting, like DPS odds. And I think they're amazing in the way that they're quick and you can do them solo, even as a healer, although that takes a little bit longer, right? And you get good gear, and then you get a hero track piece in your vault. And as you said, if you get that bountiful map, you can get a hero track piece from your next delve as well. So
Yeah.
I think this is interesting. The downside is that at some point they kind of become a chore because I knew I had to go and get them, right? Even if I did Mythic Plus dungeons or raid, this is just an extra slot in your vault, which is you can get there basically for free, right? So why not go and do them? So at some point I was doing a lot of them until I was able to start doing plus 10s in Mythic Plus,
Mm.
which now gives me a Mythic track gear. So
Yeah.
I'd rather have this
The way
compared
I
to the
do it.
hero,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but it takes a while to get there, right? If you're on a fresh character. So on a fresh character, it's kind of like a chore that you have to do. They're not as fun, and we talked about this in the last episode, but they're not as fun as some of the other content we've seen before, like Torghast, like the visions, even
Yep.
or the Mage Tower,
Yep.
you know. They quickly become boring. And Ian even addressed that you can, if you get all your gear from Delves initially, which you can totally do, then you get to a certain item level, which is not bad at all. And then if you decide to jump into Mythic Plus at this point, it doesn't make sense to do twos and threes at that point because you're like
Yeah.
600 something item level.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it would only make sense to start from 7s and 8s. And that actually happened to me. So I have a character that's almost, let's say, 6'5 or 6'10. And I have
Mhm.
zero Rider IO score because I haven't done any dungeons so far. I've only done delves and whatever, right? Crafting gear.
Yeah.
And now nobody's inviting me into keys because it looks very bad on paper, right? I have no IO score.
Yeah.
I don't want
Yep.
to do twos. At least I want to get into like 5s or 6s potentially. I know that I can do them, but nobody's gonna invite you. And we actually had a very nice comment on last week's episode, and we get a person who said delves and NPCs dungeons are what brought me back into the game. I'm not so good to play single mostly, so I get kicked a lot, and the solo content actually enticed me back. So
Cool.
there are people who are, I guess, enjoying delves, and they're doing them specifically like as their main type of gameplay
Yep.
content. But that also brings another point that I have, and that's how the dungeons, the Mythic Plus is not very PUG friendly this season. And somebody in my chat in one of the streams actually mentioned this. Oh, part of the reason for that is there's many reasons, right? But one of the main reasons is the delves, because people would get into delves, they're gonna get the gear, and they're gonna jump into Mythic Plus, but they don't have the Mythic Plus experience, right? They look okay with item level. Maybe they've done a few dungeons, they got the score, so now they get invited into keys, but they have absolutely no idea what's going on there. And another point that I follow Grau a lot, but he also said the delves are not teaching you how to play the game, right? They're not teaching you dungeon mechanics. Like, it's nice to
Yeah.
carry a candle around, you know, it's
Sure.
some kind of a
Yeah.
gameplay, but you're not learning a lot on how to play your class, how to react in certain situations, how to do boss mechanics in Mythic Plus. So I think that's a relatively big problem. And I don't think they're gonna be changing delves a lot, but maybe if they can like switch them so they can teach you something that's a bit more important to do either raiding or Mythic Plus, and maybe lower the gear that drops there. I don't know how that's gonna be taken by the public though.
Yeah, it's a good point. The concept of like educating players in delves is a good point. I think the follower dungeon can maybe do that, but that content is so basic. I do have a friend that like that's how he leveled. And that's the only he would get mad. He's a healer, he's a shaman healer. The guy I was telling you about, that's the four button healer. He press four buttons. Uh he gets so mad because they just take off, and he's like, where I don't even know where to go. Like, I have nowhere to in follower dungeons, it's like they take their time, they wait for him, they
Yeah,
give him a mage table when it starts, and he's happy, right? And so he enjoyed it, and he literally leveled through follower dungeons. And he did learn a bit about his class. And I will say, like, if there's a new character, like, or I'm like, when I went from voodoo to cell, I went to follower dungeons to get my UI the way I wanted it, play around with cell, make sure I had all my things. So I think there's good learning opportunities in follower dungeons. Some of that probably could happen inside of the delves, but I think they're going for something altogether different in Dells. I think it's like a mini game or a mini
yeah.
environment for solo players. It just, it's just different, right? Not dungeon, not it's kind of a dungeon, but not really. So I don't know. It's cool, but I don't know where they're gonna take it. And thinking about your point on transitioning from those two things to Mythic Plus, it's like night and day. Those are
Yeah.
complete, especially once you get to a certain level in Mythic Plus, it's like it's a whole new world.
Even the follower dungeons though, like, okay, they teach you a few things like what buttons to push to heal, but I don't think you can wipe in a follower dungeon. Like, I don't know what you need to do, because I've done some for whatever reasons, like on oats, etc. And like, I can pull the whole dungeon and still not wipe. You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter
Yeah.
what role I'm playing. So it's also kind of like the same with the delves. Like, you're playing something, you're achieving something. Maybe you're getting some rewards at the end. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but it is not something that's teaching you how to do the other end game content. And that's fine if you don't want to do it, but if people are using this and then they're saying, yo, I actually beat the delves, you know, I beat the follower dungeons, let me go to the next level now. And the next level is a completely different game, you know, and you're
Yeah.
not prepared because they didn't
Yep.
teach you how to play
Well,
that
what
next
why
game.
didn't Yeah. Why didn't they do that for Delves though? Why didn't they why don't they do an unlimited Delve system? Like, why cap it at 11? Why limit if those players really are enjoying that, why not treat it like Mythic Plus? Why not give them the ability to go to 13, 14, 18? Especially in certain contexts, maybe not five players going in there, but if you maybe limit it to two people or maybe
Yeah.
even three, give them the opportunity to maybe push in delves. Maybe that's
Yeah.
something. I don't
Oh,
know why they limited it.
even there, like, I've done a plus 11 delve just to get, like, there's an achievement to do plus 11, but
Mm.
I was not enticed to go and like farm them at that level because there's nothing, right? Once I get the
Yeah,
achievement,
there's no reward. Yeah.
why am I doing plus
Yeah.
11s, right? So, and that happened relatively quickly. Like, you get there, you do it, you're done, and you're never going back into it. Because you're not getting better gear. So if I'm to do a delve right now, it's gonna be plus 8. That's the easiest, the path of least resistance, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think, and we talked about this before, but they said, okay, this is an evergreen feature. if it's an evergreen feature, they need to do something about it so that it's a little bit more fun to play in general. I guess there are people who are doing this for solo content, but the inclusion of everyone should be like they should try to make it a little bit more interesting. Rewards, that's a different topic. They can work on that as well. But either make it more fun as Torghast was, or maybe at least teach us how to play the game when you're in a delve, and don't just press W and you get your
Yeah.
reward at the end.
I think well, I'll kind of say this and then we can maybe transition. But there's no leaderboards for delves, right? Because it's capped at 11. Mythic Plus is the same thing. After a 10, you're getting is IO and the same gear. It doesn't actually matter after a 10. It's like saying you ran 11s in delves, but because they stop at 11, there is no way to have a leaderboard unless they start doing speed runs or something like that. But
Yeah.
give them an ability to create like, hey, I'm the best delve person in US as a holy priest or as a shaman or whatever, right? But because that's not there, there's no incentive. Like you said, you get an achievement and that's it. In Mythic Plus, I mean, outside of a 10, like I said, what do you get? Okay, you go to 12 and all of a sudden you don't get the affixes, but it's just bragging rights at that point. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
You're not getting anything else.
Yeah, I'm sure some people are going to be against a leaderboard in the delves, because I even think Blizzard thinks it's going to be more casual content, but um, it's way too casual for me right now. I think they need to do something a little bit more.
I feel the same. I
But
feel
yeah,
the
so I guess Delves is one of the reasons why this Mythic Plus season is not APUG friendly. But let's look into some of the other aspects. One of the huge things is that so affixes is one of the things we're going to talk about. But before that, the newly introduced. And this is related to affixes. The newly introduced system makes it so that in a plus 10, you're getting now both fortified and tyrannical at the same time. And
same.
at a plus 12, you're stopping with the old affixes, but then you're getting this huge boost of additional 10% for both trash and bosses. So that creates a huge brick walls, in my opinion, on those specific places. And it makes the jump from 9 to 10 and from 11 to 12 a huge gap. I think personally that Mythic Plus is hard enough already as it is, and when you're going through the ranks, like if you're not playing in an organized if you're just pugging, getting one key level higher is always a challenge for you, right? And it's a challenge from different perspectives. So it could be the
Mhm.
gear, you're under geared.
Yeah.
It could be your IO score, so
Yep.
you're not getting invited. It could be like a skill issue because all of a sudden everything starts to hurt a little bit more. So getting that one extra key level higher is hard enough already. And now you have this huge brick walls at 10 and 12, which make it even harder to get to the next level once you get to that point. So what is your take on that? Because I think the curve should be much smoother than what it is right now.
Yeah. I like the concept and being that I really only go up to 10 at this point and I pugged I mean you pugged so I didn't notice a big difference from 9 to 10. I felt like um when there was groups that were doing the thing, it was smooth, but when they were not doing the thing, it was really rough and hurtful. But given the 9 and the 10, I for me as a healer, I didn't really notice. It's same as DPS. I think I felt like in sometimes like on my warlock, 10s were funner because the trash was always going to last a little bit longer and I could actually get damage out. Whereas like demon hunters and ret pallies and things were just obliterating trash sometimes, and my damage would look terrible compared to them. Once I got the 10s, it was like I was crushing it, right? So, um, I, I can't really speak on the 11s and 12s just because I haven't yet pushed them because I will be probably the next episode, not the next episode, but the following one after that, I'll be probably in that realm. Um, but I've listened to a lot of other people. I have a guild, and I hear them kind of complaining about it and how difficult it is, and failing keys, and like couple deaths, people leave. Yeah, it feels like a very big wall. and they're probably, I think maybe the jump from, going from like 24s and 25s and then now compressing that all down to like a 10 is a 0. And, I think that was maybe a bit too much. And maybe they can find something in the middle, because it does feel like they're big steps, right? When you're going, I mean, I remember first time doing a couple eights and I'm like, it feels really uncomfortable. Um, very difficult. And then the first time, going to like tens, yeah, I mean, it was manageable. It didn't feel as big as like going from like a 6 to like an 8, but difficult. And so, yeah, I think the compression from like the big number keys from 24s and 25s, and I mean 30s, 28s, down to 0 is a 10 was a big jump, and I think it probably was too much. And they're trying to deflate those numbers, but it really creates these huge walls.
Yeah. Well, I think the walls are there. Like I remember that when we were doing like 20s, it would still be like if you're, let's say you're doing 23s and you need to jump into 24s, it still felt like a huge step, right? And that's still the case, like going from 10s to 11s and so forth. But now some of the steps just feel much bigger, right? Because
Mhm.
all of a sudden, like from going from 9 to 10, if it was fortified week, right? All of a sudden the bosses are tyrannical, and now they start taking much more time and things like that. So those are things that I actually notice, and because I'm pugging, it's just that at least that was the case back in more towards the beginning of the season, but it was a harder step because people were under geared at that point.
Mhm.
And we would break much more keys compared to, let's say, a 9. Now, at this point of the season, I think people are over tense already. Like we over geared that content, so maybe that's why the tens don't feel that hard anymore. And I'm doing a lot of tens on ults as well. But then as you go higher, now 11 to 12 is that huge gap because you get even harder content after that. And then the jumps become bigger and bigger, in my opinion. So I don't know if it's going to be beneficial to have the steps being smaller. But at least for me, it gives me that sense of progression. Like when I do one key level higher, it feels good. It feels like you accomplished something. And right now, getting one key level item higher is just way too hard in some instances. So let me say that actually having the 12s clear the other affix, that's a huge win. I know you haven't done them yet, but we're gonna talk about the affixes in just a second. But some of the affixes are just bad. They're obnoxious. So not having them on a +12 actually feels good, especially if, let's say,
Mhm.
it's the spell affix, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden that's cleared, and you don't have to change your talents and etc. Right? So that feels good. But getting there didn't feel that natural. And even before, like, because the steps in previous seasons were smaller, once I would get to the 20s on my odds, then I would be fine pushing to 21s, 22s, etc. That it felt like this is achievable. Right now, I have absolutely no incentive to try harder content on my odds, because I know that the steps are bigger and it's going to be even a bigger struggle, a big hurdle to overtake. So this is why I'm saying I think the curve should be a little bit smaller, and they address that because that affix that you get on +12 was, I think, 20% initially. They saw that this is too much. They reduced it to +10, right?
Okay.
So maybe they're gonna take even more action for next season and try to smooth it up a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I know they have a bunch of data on this, and I'm sure they're going to be looking at it and analyzing it. And I think, yeah, hopefully they make a calibration to it to make it a little bit more. I don't. That's not necessarily easy, but gradual instead of like these big jumps where you have to fail something 15 times. Because let's be honest, like I haven't done the 12, but I'd imagine the first time you're letting certain kicks get through, or somebody's dead, right? And now
Yeah.
you will probably talk about one of the affixes, which is the 15 seconds, and that's painful, right? Like, and some players, like, especially players that have already, the mentality of like players that are like, I've already done these, you guys should know better, you should be kicking this, you should be stopping this, right? I'm leaving the key because you guys are terrible mentality, right? We have 4 deaths already. We're never going to time it. Forget it. Now they address that, but yeah. So you're also contending with the player base as well at that level, and I don't want to say elitism, but just you're gonna sometimes you get a good group that's all like I had a key the other day where it was a 8 and it was when I was lower item level, and we had probably like 50 something deaths and nobody left. Nobody was complaining, nobody was blaming anybody. Everybody stayed. It was yesterday, so it was like right before reset or whatever. So everybody wanted it was probably their last key. They didn't want
The vault
they
slot.
were already
Yeah.
committed. Yeah, they're like, I'm just gonna finish it, and everybody was pleasant at the end, which was shocking, including me. So, you have that experience, but then you also have the other experience where it's like 1 or 2 deaths and the tank leaves or one
Somebody
of the
leaves.
DPS
Yeah.
leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So, at 12, I gotta think that man, there's that pressure of the time restraint because you have tyrannical and fortified. So every second counts. If you're missing kicks, if you're missing stops, if you're overlapping, people get maybe a little upset. I don't know. You have more experience up there than I do. What's your take?
oh, it becomes much more punishing, much quicker than it was before, right? So you have much less space for mistakes. And another thing, I guess, that changed is the timer's a little bit more strict right now because we had the season in Dragonflight where you would have you could time. I think it was Blackrook Hold was the dungeon. You could have like 30 deaths and still time it on a high key level, that's also gone. And one thing that I'm going to allude to is, and this season felt much more pleasant from that perspective, especially compared to the season 3 Dragonflight. But there's much less one-shot mechanics and heal unpleasant bosses, so to speak, in which you're basically dependent on people pressing their defensives, at least on a, let's say, plus 12 key level, right? There are some still bad things. We're going to talk about dungeon design in just a second, but at least healing doesn't feel that bad from this perspective because in some dungeons in Dragonflight, you knew that if something happens and the person doesn't help you with pressing the defensive, they're dead. Like
Yeah.
there's no healing
Yep.
through that.
Yeah.
There's much less of that in the War Within, so I enjoy that a lot. But the defensive bloat is still there. Like there's still classes that have way too many defensives, and especially in higher keys, if they're pressing those buttons, and it's not even necessarily kicks and stops, right? If they're pressing the
Hmm.
defensives when they need to, you're cruising, you're breezing because you're pressing a button and everybody stopped up. But if they're not, then you're struggling, right? Because everything is
Yeah.
tuned basically at this level for them to be pressing their defensives.
Yep.
And that's basically the aspect that I don't like. I think there's still too much design and still too much defensives in the game that are requiring something like this. And that is fine on high keys in organized groups, but in PUGs, it's much harder. Like if you have a million kicks, obviously you're not going to coordinate that in a PUG. Something's gonna go off,
Mm.
and then somebody gets angry and leaves.
Yep.
This is why I'm kind of like on this topic. It's good season. It's good dungeon design. The affixes, we're gonna talk about them, that they're fine, but it is not PUG friendly by any means, right? And I would be interested to find some data and figure out how many people are playing in PUGs compared to how many people are playing in organized groups in general. But even the people who play in organized groups, they also PUG, right? Outside of their
Yeah.
playtimes with their friends. So
Yep.
I would assume that the number of people playing in PUGs is much bigger. So I don't see why Blizzard shouldn't try to cater a little bit to the people who are PUGing and make it a little bit more PUG friendly. I think that's going to be a huge bonus for the seasons, and it will be interesting to figure out if that increases the number of players that participate in the system.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple really, I think, obvious, maybe they're not obvious, but for pugs, um, the biggest thing for me, I think defensives, I was laughing earlier because I was thinking, man, I'm gonna ask Wolvie how many times does he press fade on his priest, right? Because it's so good. It's so good, man. It's like it's a nice defensive that's on a short cooldown and it's 10% and it's so good. Um, but when you think about, kicks, you got a shaman who stuns or knocks up. Let's say the knock up is less obvious because the stun, you could see the static totem or the static totem or whatever it is, and so you know not to kick. But the knock up, you don't know, and you might be kicking the same time the shaman does the knock up, and now you wasted a kick. Why can't that just be reset right away? Right? It's not PvP where you could just press kick, 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 right, and kill somebody. But in a Mythic Plus dungeon, if you miss your kick, why not just put it on a GCD? I mean, nobody wants to waste GCDs, so put it on a GCD. Uh, Lower keys, make the cast times a little longer. Like, why? I mean, these are very simple things that could probably help out the pug community. But I don't know. I don't know if Blizzard. I don't know what the strategy is. I think it's there's not a lot of. I shouldn't say there's not a lot of thought, but it seems very crude. It's just like, here it is, run with it.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
what you get.
like one thing that they said, they kind of, there was an interview, I think it might have been Ian, but they said, okay, we understand that there's way too many defensives, right? But the problem is that people need those defenses for outdoor world or for delves or something like that. And I was sitting there thinking, why are people in Mythic Plus suffering? Because Joe, who's doing delves there, needs to have an extra defensive to press for whatever mechanic is in there. Like, nobody cares about that. No offense to anyone, of course. But uh, and it came to my mind that right now there are two different tunings for PV and PvP. Like when we see
Right.
those notes for changing
Yeah.
something, it's like this
Oh yeah.
applies to PvP or this works different in PvP, right?
Yeah.
So they are basically managing two separate games or two separate tunings, so to speak, in order to maintain those two types of content. And I don't see why not. They should do the same with the different types of PV content, right? Because you do one set of gameplay, one type of gameplay in raids. It's
Yeah.
another in Mythic Plus, and then obviously there's a third that maybe you and I we don't care about it, but there's also like the outdoor delves and whatever stuff that you're doing when you're not in the two pillars of raiding and Mythic Plus. So why not tune everything and make the skills so that they're only active, for example, in those situations? Let's say
Yeah.
you need an extra defensive in delves. Once you go in, Brown gives you like this item which gives you the extra defensive, or even if you want to have it for outdoor, as soon as you go out of Dornogal, you get this buff that gives you the defensive or something like that, right?
Yeah.
If you don't want to embed it into the talents and stuff like that. So separating the skills and the balance to be separate for Mythic Plus raids outdoor as it is for PvP, maybe that's going to fix a lot of issues, because even right now, when we see some tuning happening to healers, DPS, tanks, we're saying, okay, I see what they're doing, but this is because they want to buff this class to perform better in raid because they're at the bottom there. And this has a huge impact on Mythic Plus because now other skills are affected, and you start
Oh
doing
yeah.
a lot more damage in Mythic Plus. So they
Yep.
fixed one problem in raid, but now they introduce different types of problems in different types of content where they did not intend that to be the case, right? So instead of trying to basically hold all those apples in your hands at the same time, right? And you're starting to drop them because there are too many, just try to separate everything, and then you will have one set of tuning for Mythic Plus, and everything that you do there is going to make sense, and it's going to be, I think, easier for them to keep the balance intact as well, because it will be just one bucket that you're trying to manage, right? And then you're gonna have separate skills and tuning for raid, etc., and another one if you want for outdoor, and they can branch it into as many pieces as they want. But I think this is something that would benefit. It's probably not that easy to implement. It's going to take some effort, but it's going to benefit the game in a long term.
I don't think it takes a lot of effort, I'll be honest, because here's the thing, like you pointed out, if I'm a priest in PvP, I can pick mind games, I can do phase shift, which phase shift when I fade, I'm invisible to everything for a second, right? So I can totally avoid any frontal or whatever I want, right? And they can balance for that, right? I can get mind games, like I said, and that's not even something you can do in PvE anymore,
Yep.
but you can in PvP. So, and then you go look at delves, and Bran is just an extension of your character, and there's talents for that. And so that's just a talent build. So I agree. I think it actually, yes, it involves some upwork, some upfront work to kind of extract what you're gonna pull out of um, World and Raid for Mythic Plus, but it allows them to have some very fine. And I gotta tell you, from a PvP perspective, I love the fact that, oh man, they nerfed this thing because it's killing it in the raid. Now my PvP character just got gutted. Right? That's the days of that are gone. Like, it's so nice. Um, that's why I have so many alts, because I'd have a character that I was pushing and all of a sudden it's dead, right? I can't, because the mage barrier doesn't work anymore because it was broken in PvE, right? Or vice versa. Some things would break in PvP, and they'd nerf it because of that, and it would if impact PvE. Um, so I think that makes a lot of sense, and they already did that with Delves. All right, to me, that's just an extension of your character. It's just another guy running around doing the stuff, but it's basically talents that you have that were passive, essentially. Um, I mean, it's crude, but it is what it is, right? Yeah, you do technically have some guy running around that can die, but whatever. Um, I could see them doing that for Mythic Plus, and even eventually down the road, Raid, even because getting back to what you talked about with like kicks and dispels, and you got poisons and diseases and magic, and like, how do you handle that? Because not everybody does everything, right? Um, you know, being able to tailor it so that you have to have a very specific comp when you are building your Mythic Plus team. It really cuts off a group of people if you don't have the right comp, right? And you need battle res, you need bloodlust, you need dispel, you need 2 dispels. It's like, okay, you're locked in. You're pretty much locked in at that point. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to give specific characters abilities that can, okay, you know what, Wolvie, you get the poison dispel. I'll get this other thing. Cool. We could talk about it before we put the key in, and then boom, we'll go. We have a good team. We don't have to care if it's a rogue or a mage or a warlock who can dispel in Siege of Borealis because we only have 1 dispel, whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to be tunneled into these very specific builds. You can just have anybody come in and have a little bit more flexibility because it's content specific. That's not going to impact everybody else that's outside of that
Yeah,
content.
and I like that because in Mythic Plus, that's usually, we're gonna talk about dungeon design, but that's usually one of the pain points, right? You don't have a specific curse dispel or something. But I think that applies to Raid as well because, all right, we know that Echo and Liquid are going to have everything that's needed to have the optimal group, but in your weekly raids, and it doesn't even have to be bugging, in your own guild, you might be missing a certain person. Like, for example, we just lost our evoker, so now we don't have an evoker at all in our raid, right?
Right.
So what if you're missing int? What if you're missing fort, battle shout, right? You can probably do something in the same sense with raid, where if you could get some specific skills, some specific talents just for the raid only, and if you're missing something, you're not handicapped compared to the guilds that actually have it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like this idea a lot, and I don't know how hard it is to implement, but as you said, when this happened to PvP, I don't think, like, everybody probably welcomed the idea. I don't think anyone
Yeah.
was angry. Oh, this skill is now
Amazing.
working one way in PvE and another way in PvP. So
Yeah.
if you do the same for Raid and Mythic Plus only, even if it's just that, and set
Yeah.
aside the delves and the outdoor world,
The world. Mhm.
everybody's gonna be happy. Like, nobody's gonna say a thing. I think everybody's gonna welcome this with open hearts, and they're gonna enjoy it for sure.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna
I
say
agree.
anything bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
All right.
Yeah. And
So
it's more inclusive, so which is good.
yeah, yeah. So before we go to dungeon design, let's mention the affixes, so that we alluded to some of the stuff already. What's your take on the new affixes that you get up until 12? Because I assume you played with all of
My,
them by now.
yeah, mine's gonna be a little more controversial than your. My take's gonna be different.
That's totally fine.
I love all of it. I don't mind the dispels. I don't mind the CC. I don't mind. Yeah, as a disc priest, I love this week, right? Because I get to death the affix, and it's a massive because as disc priest, when you do Shadow Word Death, if they have an absorb, it's huge, right? It's big damage, and so that's amazing for me. I'm the first one hitting that thing when it comes out. I like it. I think it's a different challenge. I will say the design is not perfect because there's times where certain boss mechanics specifically, the trash is not so much, but certain boss fights, it's like, come on, that's like I remember we she came out this week just today, uh, on the hot air balloon one, the first boss, where you
In
have to fly off.
yeah, the
She
Dawnbreaker. Yeah,
summoned as we had to fly off,
yeah.
and when we came back, she casted the thing, and it was like, oh man, like that's terrible design. Like that, how can that even? What are we supposed to do? You have to get off the boat. You can't kill it in time, so you're either dead if you kill it, or you're dead if you fly away and you come back and the boss gets the buff. So it's like, what do you do there,
Yeah.
right? So
I think that goes back to many of the previous designs that we've seen. There were some affixes that we straight away said those are bad, but then there were also some that we kind of enjoyed, but they didn't work with all the boss fights and all the designs in the dungeons. So it's kind of the same. I'm kind of in the same boat almost for most of them. For example, the orbs that spawn and you have to soak. They're kind of the same, you know. It's a fine affix. It's a little bit annoying, but then you get to this specific boss mechanic where there's just orbs that you cannot soak or you die, right?
very good too.
Um,
Yeah.
so um, and then it becomes a huge problem. So I guess that's in the okay stage because that was the same way that affixes worked back in the day. You kind of
Mhm.
swallow the pill, and you know whatever happens
Yeah.
happens.
Yep.
And then in very high keys, this is not going to be an issue. But one thing that bugs me a lot is the dispel affix, and I need to bring this up because I had some horrible times when this was active. Because first, even if they design something like this, because right now it's an absorb shield, and technically you can heal through it, right?
Sure. Uh-huh.
But the amount is it's so big of an amount that it's not plausible, man. Like the very first time I remember, the very first time I saw this affix on live, I knew how it works from the PTR, etc. Right? So I didn't even look into the affixes. So I go into this dungeon, this thing pops up, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me heal through that, right? And I failed the first time. I couldn't heal through it. Like, okay, maybe I didn't press enough buttons, or I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
press them
yeah.
hard enough, right? So next attempt, I'm like, let me pop a cooldown, you know, because I'm falling
Mhm.
behind. I can't heal through that. So I popped the cooldown. I managed to heal through that. The next one spawns, another cooldown. Then we get to the boss and I have no cooldowns because I spent all of them
Mhm.
healing the Avex. So I was like, okay, maybe that's not supposed to work this way. Let me try this spelling. But then you can only dispel basically two if you're quick enough. And the other three, what do you do, right? And these things actually, that's the one that heals the mobs around it if it goes off, right? If you don't
Yeah.
dispel it.
Yep.
These
Yep.
things actually heal bosses, man. Like, what the
Yeah. Oh
hell?
yeah. Yep.
So I'm sitting there, and some groups, like some groups, don't have the capability to dispel themselves. Like if you get, I don't think the warrior has anything. What else doesn't have it? Like DKs and rogues, maybe. Or maybe
Rogues can cloak,
yeah,
but
but
it's still
it's a long cooldown, so you cannot cloak
yeah.
everything,
Yeah,
right?
you're gonna
So,
yeah. Yep.
so some groups just don't have the option, and then there are other groups where you have the classes that can dispel themselves, but they don't even take the talent, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a healer affix, so you know the healers has to deal
Annoying.
with that, and
Yeah.
that becomes very annoying because you're dependent basically on everyone's in your
Yep.
party, right?
Yep.
You can easily get blamed because you didn't heal through it. Some DPS is just ignorant about it and they don't
Healer.
care, right?
Yeah.
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 And the annoying part is that when we had Afflicted back in the previous seasons, Blizzard said, okay, we understand that this is a problem because if the Afflicted pops and you have to dispel it, and then there's another dispel mechanic, it overlaps, right?
Yeah. You don't have
And
anything.
yeah, and
Yeah.
this is kind of like the same. And even like, let's say, last boss of Siege Borealis, you can't hold your dispel there to wait for the affix to spawn because you need to
Yeah.
dispel one person, then dispel the other one as quickly as possible if you don't have a warlock or something, which is usually the case. So it's not like you have a workaround this affix. It's considered healer affix, and they said, okay, this is a problem, and it's still in the game. It's the same thing. So this is why it's annoying me so much. It's one thing to design an affix to figure out, okay, it's bad, and then you try to fix it. But this is something that was in the game already. They said, okay, this is bad, and now it's still there, They haven't done anything about it.
Yeah. I think they like they like people talking about it because it's tough on some characters. Some characters is a breeze, right? I think Shaman it's like super easy, right? You just drop your totem and you're
Yeah, they
good.
they fixed that because you could dispel everything with the totem, but now the totem is with increased cooldown, the poison cleansing totem. So
Oh,
now,
did they bump the
oh
cooldown?
yeah, it's I think it's 2 minutes now. So you can get some of them, but then every two affixes or something, you have to do it without the totem. So
Oh, wow.
because
Oh, man.
they thought that the poison cleansing totem was way too overpowered, which to be
It
honest,
was,
it
but
is. Yeah,
pretty overpowered, yeah.
especially for
But
an affix like that.
Master spell's like
Yeah, so
pretty short
it's
cooldown.
exactly, well, they increased the massive spell cooldown as well, right? For exactly those same reasons in Dragonflight. So now
Why
it's,
wouldn't they just like make it go on one or two people then instead of like just
yeah.
nerfing the bit? It's so
I mean,
crazy.
I like how the poison cleansing totem works, but in situations like that, and most of those situations, by the way, are affix related. You know,
Yeah.
this is when
Yep.
it becomes overpowered.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nerfing something because of an affix, I mean, there are some design issues there. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying it shouldn't have been nerfed, but I think it got nerfed for the wrong reasons.
It got nerfed because only people will bring shamans,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah.
That week, it's basically only shamans. Shamans are just having a run that week, and especially
Oh yeah,
resto shamans
let
are
me say
hitting,
that
right?
on that first week, when after the I didn't even take poison cleansing for the first dungeon, but then I figured out, let me see if that works. That worked, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's not an affix anymore. And then I was done with the keys from my shaman, and I'm like, you know what? I'm done for the week. I'm not playing my other
Yeah.
healers. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
deal with this
I'm a
BS, man.
shaman. Yep. Yep.
I'm not dealing with
Yep.
this. If you're not a
True.
shaman, yeah, go play your
Yeah.
healers. I'm
So
gonna wait for
funny.
next week. And
Yeah.
if you design something like because we had at least I had this issue a lot in the past. If you design the affixes so they make you skip weeks, you know, I think that's a very bad design, right? And I had a lot
Yeah.
of weeks that I skipped back in the past, and now that happens again because of this affix on the other healers. So yeah, I think this is like one of the worst affixes, and I'm not happy that they actually brought it back basically, because the only thing that this is better than afflicted is that it's on you, so you can basically always dispel yourself, and the afflicted sometimes would spawn in a cave or something, and you didn't even have
Yeah.
line of sight of it.
That's true.
So
Yep.
that's an improvement, but everything else that has been set in the past, it's still there, man. It's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's always it's a different I don't mind the different challenge. It does get annoying, especially if you're like, but maybe that's just because I'm super casual for me at this point and not pushing keys. And then like what you were kind of saying earlier, once you get to 12, kind of all that goes away anyway. So I don't know. I you know, I just hope that, and that's the other thing, like what you said, like why nerf two abilities like Mass Dispel and Totem? Let those characters enjoy it. Yeah, they get a week where they get a little bit more invitations. Well, those two classes just happen to also be the most OP, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
Um, but still, I mean, why just gut that, or not gut it, but make a big change to it when it's your design issue, right? The issue
Yeah.
is your design, not the talents, and they should really take a look at that. But I think sometimes it's like, what's the easy change for us, right? What can we do that's pretty quick, and what's going to take less work to do? I don't know, because some of the changes, like talking about the 15 seconds thing. Okay, here's a quick change, boom, we'll just give you that. You know, it's just like it's kind of lazy. I don't know. Maybe they're just focusing resources elsewhere.
Oh, talking about the 15 seconds, and this actually goes to the dispel affix as well, because as we said, it goes out on 12. But the places where where you struggle with this affix and the spells is basically the mid range, like the 5 to 9 keys, where people are a little bit more ignorant and they don't know that they can dispel themselves. So this is where you struggle with this affix, because once you go into
Yeah,
the higher keys, people are a little bit more experienced with the game, so they know, like the people who have their own dispel, they know that they need to dispel themselves, right? So on higher keys, if everybody's dispelling themselves, it's not an issue that much, and then it
easy.
goes
Yep.
away at 12. But it is the mid range keys that suffer from that, and the low keys, right? And
Yeah.
this is where the affix actually hits harder and where it's active. Same thing with the 15 seconds dead timer, man, because this thing starts, I think, at a +7, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
7. Yeah.
I think that's okay. First, I think that 15 seconds is way too much, but I also think that it starts way too early, right? In
Mhm.
like sevens, eights, people are still learning the dungeons. You're not even getting the best creds on a +7, right?
Mhm.
So you're still in this learning curve, and all of a sudden, you start to get punished significantly more for dying. And first, mistakes in pugs are always going to happen, right? That's a given. And the lower your key is, the more mistakes happen. And now all of a sudden you get punished more and more for the learning process, right? This is still the learning process. So I know they tried to fix it by adding those extra 90 seconds. That was a little bit of a dumb fix for me because they introduced the affix at first. They were like, here's the extra 15 seconds for dying, and they were like, oh, that's wrong, now let's extend the timer. Like, it's kind of counter intuitive to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It is.
yeah, so I don't know what's your experience with this, but I would probably be fine having this in a non-pug environment, because in a coordinated group, if you die and you make mistakes, it makes a little bit more sense to punish you. But if you're pugging, mistakes are given, they're guaranteed. And you're getting punished enough because you before it was 5 seconds, right, which is still
Yeah.
part of the timer. But
Yep.
then when you die, you're either running back, which is even more time. We had some obnoxious
Yep.
run backs in Dragonflight. I don't even want to get
Yeah.
there. And
Yep.
then the other thing is you might be using like a battle res and you've lost your buffs, etc. Everybody's talking about that. So I think you're punished enough. As I said, I think Mythic Plus is hard enough, and now this is just making it even harder. So I don't understand why this was introduced, and I haven't seen any person that would say I'm happy about this affix. Everybody hates it. So hopefully they remove it. But I don't know. Do you have a different take on this?
Yeah, I like it, but I think it's too broad. And here's what I mean by that. Like you said, going back to the dispels, 4, 5, 6, 7, they're still learning, right? So why punish them? Same thing, 8, 9, 10. How hard would it be to make it 3 seconds from 7 and 5 seconds to, I mean, health and damage goes up gradually every single key level. Why can't the same thing happen with the timer, right? And really, you're trying to curtail the their goal with adding this was to try to prevent the really high level people from just pulling massive, things and okay, we failed, but we could still do it because we'll just try it again. And who cares if we die to because the tank's gonna stay alive and we'll kill this stuff eventually. Um, because he could kite, he could jump around and do all this stuff. They're trying to avoid that, right? But that's not happening at sevens. That's not happening at eights. The, the,
Yeah.
the, the groups aren't coordinated enough to do that. So why punish them the same amount that you're doing at a 12 that you're doing at a 7? It makes no sense. Why not gradually increase the death time? Why not gradually decrease cast time as keys go up, right? Lower levels, the cast time's longer. Higher levels, it's quicker, right? That's work, right? And that takes effort. But I don't think, how hard is it to engineer? I don't know. I'm not, not a game designer. I got a friend who's a game designer. He could probably talk about it. But to me, it's more logical. These are just broad strokes of like, okay, 15 seconds for everybody once you hit this key, no matter if you're level 7 or level 15. It's 15 seconds. Oh, we made a mistake. Now we'll give you 90 seconds. These are just really broad strokes instead of saying, what can we do to make this work for everybody? We have a goal. We don't want this happening. This is the solution. But why do we have to impact the people that are obviously pugging at 7, 8, and 9, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's guilds that are doing it as a guild group that are super casual, doing 7, 8, and 9s. And I'm not saying that to be offensive. I'm in a guild that has very casual players, and they love doing keys at like that level, 7s and 8s. Like that's where they like to function. And there's like one person that does 10s, and that's like the stud of the guild. And it's like cool. But most of the time people are pugging, so why punish them?
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, this 15 seconds is fine for high keys, and it's questionable how we define high keys, right? Because I don't think it should be 15 seconds in like 11s and 12s even, because mistakes still happen there, right? Especially if you're bugging. But that was actually one of the solutions that I was alluding to. Have this gradual timer to be very low on low keys and then increases as the key level goes higher. I think that's a very good solution because, as you said, and I love this quote, but you're basically hitting the people at +7 with a punishment that should be for like a +15, which is something way out of their range. So having this timer to gradually increase, I think is one of very good solution. And I'm pretty sure that's very easy to implement because obviously they have the capability to change the dead timer in different keys. So, whether if it's going to be 5, 15, or let's say 2, 3, and then it goes by 1 up to like a certain amount, that should be very easy to do, right? I don't think that that's going to take any effort at all. And it's going to make people happier, I guess, across the board. Because people who are learning are still going to experience this in a way that they shouldn't be pressured that much not to die in a +7, right? I mean, come on. And then if you get to like the +14s and 15s, then yeah, I mean, I don't care if you die and you're punished 15 seconds. Maybe that's fair there. I'm sure people are going to have different takes on this if they're playing those types of keys, but at that level, yeah, mistakes are not allowed basically. So it's fine to have a bigger punishment there.
I agree.
Another possible solution, by the way, was to have some free deaths that don't count against your timer in the beginning. But that's also kind of like in the sense of let's add 90 seconds,
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think that the gradual timer or removing that is definitely going to be something. All right, so let's jump to the next topic, which is basically going to be the dungeon design. And at the end, we're going to make a tier list of the dungeons for this season and see how we like or dislike them. Now, one thing that I'm going to mention is that there are a lot of dungeons this season that people are trying to avoid. And I think that's a trend, basically, from all the seasons so far. And I told this story to you before, but let me share with everybody else. I'm gonna give an example with an old dungeon, the Court of Stars. So that was part of the Mythic Plus system somewhere in Dragonflight, I think. And the dungeon starts with you pressing a button, boarding a boat, and then you go to the dungeon, right? You're just floating on the boat until you actually can do something. Because on the boat, you can't even fish, you're just looking into the flowers. So this journey from clicking the button, boarding the boat, until engaging the trash in the dungeon, it takes a minute, almost a minute, right? So you can say, okay, that's fine. What's a minute? I looked into my stats at the end of the season. I did this dungeon more than 60 times across the board on all of my odds and etc. 60 times means that I was sitting in this boat for 60 minutes, basically doing nothing. So imagine what would be if you're like advertising to a friend, hey, come do World of Warcraft, play with me, because we have this cool Mythic Plus system that's amazing. It has all these cool features. And then one of the features is you're sitting in a boat for 60 minutes and you're not doing anything, So this goes back to say that I see many boats in this season as well. We can start with, for example, City of Threats, where you have to, after the first boss, you have to run around, find all the Eyes of the Queen. Then even after you kill them and running around, being blocked by the patrols, I guess that's fine. But even there, at the end, you talk to the guy, he's going up to the stairs, so you're just not doing anything. Then there's like, I think, 20-something seconds of RP once he gets to the top. So that's probably even more than a minute. I haven't done the math to that because I just don't want to. I don't want to know the results. But this is something that I don't think anyone enjoys. And this is not why I sign up to play in Mythic Plus. I sign up to, test my skills, play, kill trash, kill bosses, not just sit there for 20 seconds and watch a guy stare into the nothing. And there's many examples like that as well. So, for example, the maze in Mists of Tyrannocide. It is a fun puzzle, right? It is something that the first time you do it, it's fine. Even the first time I did City of Threats, we need to figure out how to find the Eyes of the Queen. When it's fresh and it's new, you can't enjoy it. But then once you have to do it more than 2 or 3 times, it becomes not only boring, it becomes annoying, right? And the same thing with the maze, right? It's very annoying because usually I play a ranged healer, so whose job it is to solve the maze? Well, it's probably me, right? So I'm running around and I'm solving it, but I don't enjoy that, right? And I think, for example, in Mists, if they made it so, let's say, if you don't want to show all the signs at the same time, right? At least make them flash shortly, one by one, so they circle around, and you don't have to walk to them and solve the puzzle this way, right? It
Yeah.
will be the same, but and they even made it more annoying with the blue stuff on the ground, so now you cannot walk on top of them. That they just made it harder. So those are like simple design decisions where you just you're just going to make it more pleasant to play. And you have to cater and think about people who are not going to just do this 2 or 3 times. They're going to do it multiple times across the season. And once this becomes annoying chore, it's just like every time I get into City of Threats, I get angry, man. Why are we running around and we're doing nothing? I just get
Mhm.
angry. Maybe I'm just a
Yeah.
little angry kid, but
Yeah.
I think they could fix this with some easy design issues that they can fix.
Have you had the guard teleport? Like the guard is obviously not on top of you, and it teleports back and knocks you and takes you back to the beginning.
Oh yeah, that happened actually
Yeah.
many times. I even had a video. I don't know if I made a short about it, but I was like miles away from it. Like I think that
Yeah.
was in the beginning when it was bugged, because maybe it was some kind of like a server issue where it was displaced on the server, but the visuals were different. I think they fixed that part, but that
Hey,
definitely happened a few times.
oh my goodness.
I
Happened
would,
twice today.
yeah. Oh, it still happens.
Today, yeah. Today it
Okay.
happened to me once, and then I was in a key again later today, and I actually waited for it because it happens right when you're going up. When you're going up the steps to the boss, that's where it happens. If the thing is there, if it's close, I just wait. And
Yeah.
sure enough,
i-
the rogue and the hunter went, and boom, she jumped back, and both of them got
It's
kicked. The
still
three
that
of them
same
got kicked
guard.
back. Yeah,
Oh, I'll
yeah.
mention one other thing. How many times did you break a Dawnbreaker key because of bugs?
Yeah, the boat, the tank
Oh
fell
man.
off the boat.
Oh yeah, there's
Yep.
several, man. So first, when you fly to the small boats on the side, sometimes
Yeah.
I just fell straight through them, right? And one time I felt 2 times in a row, right? I fell through it. I managed to make it back flying on the dragon, and I fell through it again. And now I'm out of vigor, so I can't actually even get back in
Yeah,
there.
you're done. Yeah,
The
you're
other
done.
day, I landed on the boat. Like I had my feet on the boat. I was kind of stable. I dismounted, and as I dismounted, I fell through it, and then I died because I was not even on my mount. I had that was a short. I think that happened only for like a week or so. But when the first boss does the big bubble where you have to fly out, we
Yeah,
had people who couldn't mount up, right?
yeah, yeah.
That
That
didn't
happens.
happen to me, but we had not one, but like the tank and another DPS, they couldn't just mount up, so they just
Yep,
died. There's
yep.
nothing you can do. And another bug is when you kill the trash on the big boat to fly to the small boats. When you mount up, you press your two button or whatever it is for you to fly up, right? And I fell through the big boat down. I kind of get stuck into the middle of the big boat and you can't even get out of it. Uh,
Yeah, Dawnbreaker's
yeah.
buggy, man.
So and
Better now.
it still happens. I still like the
Yeah.
the one that I landed on the small boat and then I fell through
Uh-huh.
my dad. That was last week.
Yeah.
It's still bad.
No, it's still
And
broken.
then not to
There was the
mention,
line of sight, right?
yeah, line of sight. And then the other thing that happens is if you have some skills like, let's say, Jade Fire Stomp on your monk, sometimes I press this and it like flies away or something. Like it's not on the
Yeah,
boat.
yeah. You still can't do Divine Star on Priest.
Yeah,
On the small boats, it doesn't work.
yeah,
And do you remember the first week when the casters had unlimited range in there? And if they got aggroed, you could be on the boat and they would still be shooting you from all the way
yeah,
down on the ground.
yeah.
Like, what?
So
Crazy
that is
game.
very annoying to me because it is one of the new dungeons, right? And you design it this way, but it's full of bugs. And in my opinion, that thing should have made it to live servers if it's that buggy. And
Yeah,
it's still there. And I have a
yeah,
friend who has a take on things like that. Like he says, I cannot swim. So for my vacations, I don't go to the seaside. I go to the mountains because I just cannot swim. So that's
yeah,
kind of like my same take here. If you cannot make a flying dungeon because they obviously failed miserably with this, don't make it, man. Like make
yeah,
the boat static or something and make them with teleports or whatever. But all of those bugs and those things would break keys. Like especially if you go above 10 or something and you
oh, yeah,
wipe on the first boss because you couldn't mount. Like you're done, right? And it's annoying because that's something we didn't mention, but on hierarchies, it takes longer and longer to stay in queue if you're pugging to get into a group. So you spend like 20, 30 minutes to get into a key, and then you break it because not because of you, but because something bugged out. That feels miserable. And that's and it's not like it happens once or twice. It happened multiple times, especially in this dungeon. So they just need to do much better on this end.
The only one I will say that I don't mind is Grim Batol, because at least when you're on the dragon, it's counting towards percent, which is nice. So I'm okay with that. And if you're efficient with it and your team is coordinated, you can actually get a lot of percent there and save some time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if people aren't doing it, I've had a couple where just a couple of the people just aren't even using, and it's like, okay, now we got to kill all this trash, and it's taking a lot longer. So I like that one. I don't feel it's as punishing
Yeah.
as the treasure hunt or even the maze. And the maze is even worse because you always get a brainiac that just thinks they know the maze, and they go on the wrong one, and they do it multiple times. And
Yeah. And even like
yeah,
I'm running around and I'm trying to memorize all the things, and like I know what it is. Sometimes I even ping it and somebody just goes into the wrong one. I'm
yep,
like,
just
man,
go to the other one.
if
Yep,
you don't know
yep.
what you're
I just
doing,
did the work. I
yeah.
just did the work.
And
Yeah.
and just to add to this, because it's even more annoying. If for some reason I didn't do it, or maybe I'm like melee and whatever, right? So I couldn't do the mace. We're done. Nobody has done it, right? The range,
Yeah.
like the BM hunter who has no problem doing it, he's not. So I'm like, okay, let me run to this one here, so I review it and everybody can see it. And the rest of the people are just standing there in the middle and they're looking at me. And like, guys, you need to help.
Yeah.
Like, run
Oh,
to the other one so I can see them and we
yes.
can solve the puzzle. What are you like? What are you supposed to do here? Like, do you expect me to run around and still memorize them? And like,
The healer gripes,
and they're just
man.
standing there and then looking at me. I'm like, do I leave the key, man? Like, come on, come on,
Yeah, I did
just
the same thing in Miss. We were on the puzzle boss, and I had a warlock that stood in the line, the direct damage thing, got killed twice, and we wiped. But on that one, I was pinging where to go because we were in a kind of a rhythm, and I had time to like zoom out and see it. And I would just ping it. Well, the second time, people were taking damage, and I just got unlucky with like the Volpair or whatever, the fox spawning next to me. So I wasn't pinging it. They weren't killing. They didn't know what to do.
yeah.
So now I'm behind because it's AOE, and so I can't just like heal and tell them where to go. And then we wiped. And then I'm like, guys, I'm super undergeared. You guys are like 2,600. Why are you expecting me to tell you where to go? You guys better get on it. The next pull was flawless. They just did it
Yeah.
on their own, and I just healed. But it's like, why do I have to tell you to do that? Come
Yeah,
on, guys.
there's crazy situations, and one more bug that happened to me in Mists on that second boss. For some reason, the tank had it on the side, like almost in like the little river around the arena,
River, uh-huh.
right?
Water,
So
uh-huh.
the lines spawn, and they were like under the ground, like you couldn't see them. Like you know that they
Oh,
spawn because your timer says
yeah, the
lines
prompt.
dodge,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah,
And
yeah.
because we had like a bunch of people close to each other, like you move to the side, but you move
You're
on
dead.
on
Yeah,
another
yeah,
line and you die and you don't
yeah.
see the line, right? So that was another bug that happened there. And unfortunately, it feels like this season there's just way too many of those things, especially in the Dawnbreaker. But that's like one of the reasons that that people are avoiding dungeons. I guess the other one is something we already mentioned. It's the mandatory dispels. So for example, a lot of curses are available in some of the dungeons, specifically Green Bateau, etc. And if you don't have a dispel, you're screwed. Same with poisons in, let's say,
Yep,
Arakara, things like that. And then we have
yep.
the double dispel at the end of Siege of Borealis. And I was very reluctant to play those dungeons. Even back in the day, we had Temple of the Jade Serpent, where you had this last boss where you had two dispels, right?
Yeah,
So to me, this is just not fair because um, if you have a warlock, for example, to have the second dispel, it's free, right? Because there's
yeah,
nothing you dispel
yep,
the other person dispels, you're done. But if you
yeah.
don't, you are struggling, like you're fighting for your life. You're hoping that people are going to press defensive so they can live until your dispel comes off cooldown and you can do it again,
Yeah,
right?
or you're praying it goes on the tank. Please go on
Yeah,
the
please
tank.
go on the
Please
tank,
go on
right?
the tank.
So all of those things, this is just a bad design because um, in PUGs especially, you don't have control to say, okay, I'm gonna dispel this because you have like a defensive. You don't even know in PUGs if people are going to press their defensives. And then in organized groups, that's not even an issue because they probably have
On
two
it.
dispels and things like that.
Yep.
So I don't know. I see where they're coming from. They want to have this diversity in dungeons, right? To have some people being able to
Yeah.
tackle
Sure.
something and others not. But in a bug world, you don't have the luxury of choosing your comp, right? You're standing in queue, as I said, you're standing in queue for like 20 minutes. You're just praying to find people, man. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, I can pick out of this people. You're praying to find somebody who is seems on paper competent enough to play in your key, and they're probably not gonna be the class that you want, right? If you're
Yep.
handy picking the classes as well, you're probably going to spend an hour and a half in queue, and you still might
Yep.
not get it.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
you end up playing with this group, which you work very hard to get as a pug, right? Together, you go into the dungeon, and all of a sudden, you are presented with a problem, and you don't have the solution because the solution was 15 minutes back when you were making your comp, and it
Yep.
was like pick this talent or pick this class, but you didn't have that luxury. So now you're standing there, you're faced with a problem, and there's no solution. Like
Yeah.
this is just not fair. This is just not fair, and this goes back to us saying maybe they should just put some options, some optional talents in the beginning of the dungeon,
Yeah.
so you have
Yeah.
solutions to those problems. Because I see if you're organized group and you're punished because you played wrong, because
Yeah.
in organized group maybe you have options to change your characters, but if you're pugging, you probably have one character, maybe you have one oath, etc., but you don't have options, right? And all of a
Yep.
sudden you have this wall in front of you that nobody can solve. So
Yep.
I think that mandatory dispels is something that shouldn't be there specifically in Mythic Plus.
Yeah, and that's where I'll be kind of a separate. It's fun, right? Like there's certain fights, like you talk about, is it City of Echoes or Threads, the one where when you after you finish the double bosses with all RP, you go up, you kill all those mobs, and then there's that big beetle at the top of the stairs before you go in. That's the worst as a disc priest. And on my shaman, it's like poison cleanse totem.
Yep, I don't
There's
care.
nothing to do here. Yeah, it's not even it feels like the easiest trash. And on my priest, I'm like, okay, I got to get rapture out before. I got to make sure everybody's atoned.
Yep.
I got to have this and this and that, right? Okay, I know I'm excited. Okay, give me a second. Um, but so it's interesting. And then same thing with Siege of Borealis, where it's like on my priest, I could dispel one, I could do massive spell if they're together. But you find a way. You got your pain subs and your sacks, and we play the characters and we know all of our abilities and we know the people we're playing with. By the time you get to some of these places, you kind of understand who are your more sophisticated players and who aren't. We have to do that. You and I are players that you figure that out by the time you get to the end, and okay, this tank is capable. I'm not going to dispel it on him. He's just going to eat the full dot. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll dispel it off me. That's super easy. Or if it goes on somebody I know who's super squishy, I dispel them. If it's on me, I hit my desperate prayer. I'll hit my fade. I'll hit my if I'm on my shaman, I'll do the totem that gives me a big shield. Um, you know, there's answers. There's a sack on a pally, or you just bubble or whatever. So we'll figure it out. But in at the lower levels, people that are still learning their classes, they don't play a lot. They only play 4 hours a week. That's tough. That's rough, and it's not really fair to them. You want those players to keep playing so that we have a healthy player base. And if you're not considering some of that stuff, that player base will just erode, and they'll go play something else like Fortnite or something that's way easier, where they're not getting yelled at as a healer or a tank because they didn't do something right, and everybody's mad because they're bitter because they flipped 50 keys in only time like 5 of them or whatever. We want to avoid that. And so yeah, we haven't talked about this even outside the podcast, but player base and healthy player base and getting new players is important, and Mythic Plus is one of the places to do that. And they need to find a way to kind of calibrate the levels so that players can learn along the way and not have these huge stepping stones to get to the next level, because it'll just erode at the player base. People will stop playing.
Yeah, yeah. And again, if there's a problem, then they need to like show you the solution. You need to know what to do, not just to guess, oh, maybe I need to dispel that, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then you need to have the solution, because even if you figure out, okay, I need to dispel that, oh, shoot, I'm the wrong class. I cannot dispel that, you know?
yeah.
Things like that should be much more friendly, both for new players, for pugs, you know? Because
I can't.
those problems, I guess, are there for. Um, I wouldn't even say that they're there for the high end Mythic Plus pushers. But even if you assume that this is why they're there, they have the solution, right? And we don't. So
Yeah, yeah. That's right.
that's why it feels unfair to me. All right. So having said that, let's do a little fun thing. Oh, I'll just show this chart first. This is going back to saying that some dungeons are better designed than others. This kind of goes back to this is the amount of times the keys have been played up until last week. And sorry that it's so bright, but I couldn't change the coloring. So as you can see,
Okay.
City of Threats is something that people will basically avoid. Is it because of what I said? One thing that I'll add is all the bosses there are actually very hard as well. So the dungeon is not only one of the most difficult dungeons, but it also has this RP, which is annoying, etc. So as you can see from the chart, and if you're not watching your screen, City of Threats is the dungeon that has been played 1.2 million times. And the winner here is Mist of Tyrannicide, which has been played almost 2.4 million times. So
Yeah,
basically, people played in Mists almost 2 times more than they played in City of Threats.
yeah,
And I think this shows some discrepancy in the dungeon design, because if you design a dungeon and it's good, people will be willing to go there and play it. And obviously, that's not the case with City of Threats or some of the other dungeons that we see in this chart. And we know that they have this data, right? This data basically comes from like websites like either IO, etc. And
yep.
looking into that, they should be able to draw the conclusions and make the needed adjustments. So this chart is not so doesn't have such a big
Lopsided.
standard
Yeah,
deviations. Yeah, it should be more
yeah.
more flat.
Yep.
And having said that, let's go and play a little bit of a funny game. Let's make a tier list of the dungeons for this season. So you can rate them in whatever way you deem necessary, like difficult, hard, fun, or easy. All of those things. Let's try to express our thoughts on every dungeon and see if we can agree if it's a good dungeon, a bad dungeon, etc. And
Okay.
see how close we are to that chart that we showed on the previous screen.
All right. Cool. How about you? Yeah,
S-
you. Why don't you
We
go
can we
first?
can start with Dawnbreaker, since this is the first
Okay.
one over here. Um,
Yep.
to me, that is a pretty good dungeon in the terms of design. Like, I didn't say this, but I actually don't like flying around in mounts, because one of the problems there is, bugs aside, of course, is that
Yeah, yeah.
when you're flying around in a bug, somebody is going to like land in the wrong place, butt
Yep.
pull something, aggro it, or like the tank is going to go somewhere and you're not expecting that, so you're late there to the party, and people are like the mobs are just smashing him before you're even there. So
Yep.
that's a bad take on me. Like, I like the boss design, I like the trash, I like the idea, although it's not implemented correctly because of all the bugs in that dungeon. So from that perspective, it's a good dungeon. But if I have to account my experiences there with all the brick keys because a bug happened and there's nothing you can do about it, like if you fall through the boat or you can mount on the first boss, and because of the flying around, this goes pretty low for me. Like, I would put it probably into like the C tier, although it's not a bad dungeon in general. I think that if they implemented it in a better way, like there were not that many bugs and maybe you're not flying around, this could probably even go up to like A or S for me. But in my mind for now, it's not a dungeon that I enjoy that much, so I just have to put it low. What's your take?
I like it. I actually like it a lot. I think, given outside the bugs, um, I feel like towards the end of the season, kind of everybody knows where to fly. There's a very deliberate path that people go through, and so I like the boss fights. I like the mini bosses. I like the mechanics on the bosses of, like, range get out. Let's, because we're gonna have to get these big orbs and thing, and then on the first boss, like I like the mechanics of all the fights. I like the forgiving timer in that one. I feel like that's another one where you can have some mistakes and some wipes and still time it and get your crests pretty reasonably. Where I feel like there's not a big run back there ever, right? If you wipe there, you just get on your mount and you fly to where you were last, and you're there. It's pretty quick. In addition to the timer, I like the fights. Um, and everybody figured out the shortcut, or maybe not everybody, but the shortcut on Rosh Hashan or whatever his name is, where you just fly straight instead
Yeah.
of going all the way around the thing. First week, people were dying because they didn't know they had to get the orbs, and they wouldn't even get to the end platform because they would just die because they didn't have light. So now later in the season, it's a bit more fun. I like it. I'd probably, from a mechanic standpoint, like boss fights and stuff, I like it. I'd give it like an A for me.
All right. So do we agree on maybe B, somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I think B's in the middle.
I
Yeah,
would
B's
assume
in the
that it
middle.
would be higher for you as well if there were like no bugs and the experience was a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit
for
better.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll add to what you said. The one good thing about flying in this dungeon is that the run back time, as you said, is actually lower, which it's totally fine with me. I totally enjoy that. All right, next on the list is Arakara. For me, that's not one of the most difficult dungeons. I actually enjoy it maybe because it's new content, right? Something we haven't seen before. I don't enjoy the mandatory poison dispels. Well, they're not mandatory, but like they're very annoying on the last boss.
Yeah.
And the last boss is also a PUG killer. Like, I like the design of the last boss, but if you're not in an organized group and people do not know what they're doing, a lot of keys are bricked there at the end, especially in like the lower spectrum of keys. So maybe because of that, Puck struggling in this dungeon and the spells, I'm not gonna put it into S. I would say this is an A dungeon for me, but it's one of the dungeons that I definitely enjoy.
It's same for me. It's up there. That's one of the ones where even in a pug you could do some really big pulls and it goes well. Um, you know, it's fun. On my shaman, it's a breeze. On my priest, the poison is a bit rough. I see people panicking on the last boss often, and so yeah, that definitely ends up killing it. Oftentimes, people looking for they don't like. I had somebody today say like, "I need help with the pools," and it's like, breathe on the mob and the pool's there. Like, what do you mean? They have no health. You breathe on it and you pick one of the ones you want. Just have a little awareness. And then okay. And this is an eights, right? Which you would think they would know that already.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then just seeing people like shapeshift and get knocked into the thing, freedom early, panicking, like doing like a CC, and knocking somebody else out of the. That happened to me today. The paladin freaked out and did I don't know if he did blinding light or something, but all of a sudden I was in the boss and I was dead, even though I
Yeah.
was, So you get some of that. So it's funny to see the panic ensue on the last boss. But all in all, I like that dungeon a lot. I feel like it was put together. I like the boss fights. I like the big trash pools. It's high up there. I'd probably give it an A.
All
I
right.
don't know about S, but
I
A.
think
Yeah.
I think we can agree on this one to be A. All right. Next on the list is Green Bateau. Now, for some reason, this is not one of the dungeons that I enjoy a lot. It does have mandatory curse dispels, so it's easier to do on some classes than other. And when I'm playing my shaman, it's fine. But for example, if I'm playing disc, it's not that good. The other big part in this dungeon, I guess, is the last boss, which is extremely hard. It does a lot of AoE damage that you have to heal. Then you have to avoid all the tentacles. You have the debuffs that go on people, and again, a lot of keys are bricked at that end point, which is kind of bad because it's one thing to break to brick the key in Dawnbreaker where the bug happens in the beginning on the boat, so you're like 10 minutes in and you wasted 10 minutes. But Green Bateau is a long dungeon, and then if you break on the last boss, it feels bad.
Yeah.
So it's I guess it's not bad for a all dungeon that comes back. But I wouldn't give it like a high score. I would probably put it somewhere in the middle behind Dawnbreaker, like in a B. I wouldn't even mind if it's C, but let's not be too harsh. So let's say it's a B dungeon for me.
For me, it's there's some cool mechanics with like the dragons. Um, there's the magic debuff. The big absorb things that go on. There's some really interesting things there. Um, the last boss I think is exciting and fun. I like the last boss. I like the tentacles and the addition of that. I thought that was interesting, and the big closing collapsing circle. I think that was a really good improvement. The thing I don't like is I feel like it's an unforgiving timer,
Yeah.
especially even though they increase like when you after you kill certain bosses, you're a bit closer. So like the respawn points, it still feels very unforgiving at certain points. A lot of the tanks cheese the third boss, or is it the third boss, the
Yeah.
dragon?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like when people cheese things. It kind of takes the what are we here for? We just going for loot, or we actually trying to like play the game? Um, so I don't know. That one to me is like BC. I don't know. They got some good loot. I mean, I want the Gale of Shadows on pretty much almost everything, but
Yeah.
um, but the dungeon itself, I don't know. For me, it's like BC.
All right. So low B or high C? Where do you want to put it?
Yeah, low B. I
Low
think
B is
low
fine.
B.
Yeah.
The dragon flying around is fun. I like that. I actually enjoy
Yeah. I
especially on
don't
my
mind
retro
it.
druid. Yeah, I get a break of like not having to spam keys for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
I agree there with you. Maybe that's the most unforgiving timer. This is my impression for this season, but I think this is the one that always comes very close. Yeah.
yeah, it's always tight
All
every
right.
time.
So Mists, which is obviously the most played dungeon this season, based on the data. Um, for me, as I said, the maze is a little bit obnoxious, especially in bugs, especially if I'm melee, because I don't mind doing it. But if I'm, let's say, on my pally or my monk and I need to be in melee, then I just cannot do that. The other thing that kind of like took a little bit away from the appeal of this dungeon was the last boss, because the last boss is one of the hardest part of dungeon. Like, I think we can agree on that, especially on Tyrannico.
Oh yeah, for sure.
With especially in bugs, if you're not baiting close to the wall and there's green puddles all over the place. And
Yep.
I remember that because I played at the end of what was this? No, that was Shadowlands, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I played to Shadowlands. So I played this dungeon back in the day, and I still remember that the last boss was very hard. And now
Yep.
they actually added mechanics to the last boss, because there was no green circle around it back in the day.
Yeah. Yep.
That's new. So they made it even harder, especially if you're melee. So I didn't think that's necessary. So that was like a big minus for me. Um, and I could put it into a S, but because of the maze, because of the last boss, because of those changes they made, even like the blue circles in the maze are a little bit more annoying now. I would probably put it around the Arakara.
Uh, um, here's what I can't stand about that dungeon. Outside of the maze, which I don't mind, I think it's fun, whatever, if it's done right. Even the puzzles during the fight. I can't stand everything after that because there's always weird trash because the percent it's not it's unless you have the tech to get the extra mobs
Yeah,
during the maze, that you're always never fully at percent, and you have to either run past the boss and get it or kill the boss and go get. I don't like that. I think that's bad design. I think I didn't like that. That shouldn't be that hard to fix. So now people are like pulling some stuff from here and pulling them all together and doing, and that's all fine. But I think it's just a bit much, and I think it makes it a bit clunky, especially after that boss. Um, the second boss, the first boss, I should say, is interesting with the two guys. I don't know. That one's for the fear and getting through that. I think is always interesting. I don't know. Sometimes there's a fear and sometimes there's not. I don't know. I don't know how it's
if you're quick enough, I think you get past the fear. But if you're
if
slow,
you're pumping. Okay,
yeah,
okay, yeah. Okay. Because I'm like sometimes on my shaman I always run tremor, but it's like sometimes on
sometimes you
my
don't
priest
use
we get
it.
weird.
Yeah,
Sometimes we know. Yeah, exactly. Now I always use. I have timers. I pay attention to my timers. So, anyways, miss. I I don't give it an S or A for sure. I can't stand after the second after the maze and all that and the trash and the poison and the
yeah,
people
yeah,
getting knocked off and yeah and then the link on the bot and everybody spreads out in pugs in that one. As a healer, I can never get everybody to be in range at all. It's always a challenge and there's always
yeah.
somebody all way on the other side. It's a very uncoordinated fight. It's challenging, but but it's still fun. It is one of my favorites, but it's got its pieces. So for me, maybe after thinking about it, it's probably like a low B, a high B, maybe A, but
All
definitely
right.
not S for me. Definitely
Okay.
not.
Yeah, not as for me as well. So if we put it here, are we happy?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So that was Mists. Let's go to the Necrotic Wake. Now, this is a good dungeon overall. It's not one that comes back, so we played it back in the day. It's less dependent on weapons nowadays. They were a big thing back in Shadowlands. They still are, specifically on some pools and some bosses.
Yep.
But you can maybe you cannot do it without the weapons at all. But it's less forgiving, so to speak.
Yeah.
I guess
Yep.
the only bad part here is the Stage Flash boss, which could cause a lot of trouble, and the Gauntlet before it for pugs. And it was actually overtuned at the start. The AoE
Mhm. Yeah.
damage,
Yeah.
the pulsing
Yep.
damage was
Yep.
obnoxious.
Huge.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of, I kind of get annoyed by this because I had friends in previous seasons where they would go into an overtuned dungeon. I can tell some stories about that. They would play it once and they say, "Oh, this thing is so hard. I'm not gonna step my foot here again ever." So that's why I was kind of scared when they released it with the overtuned boss. But they fixed that relatively quickly. I guess they nerfed it a little bit, so it's more tolerable right now. So it's probably one of the dungeons that I don't mind at all this season. I wouldn't mind putting it into S. It's definitely up there for me. It does have some annoying parts, but I could like overlook them and say that that's fine. Do you have a different take?
It's a familiar dungeon for me. I like all the boss fights. I like the weapons. It's just a different thing, and it's fun to be able to grab like a spear and then the silence or the shield. Um, and then there's some groups that just never grab it. You're like, they go, it's so weird. They'll go
Yeah,
pull the trash for the spear before the double-headed boss, but then they won't grab the spear. Like
yeah.
I have two things on my back and I'm pinging it and I'm like, why did we clear this trash if you're not gonna go? Okay, I don't get it. Okay. You just saw somebody else do it and that's what you do. Okay, cool. Uh Very interesting. It's a fun dungeon. I love the boss, the double boss where you the grips, and it's fun when that is pulled off properly. Where like she can't chase because she gets gripped.
Yeah.
She gets gripped again. If you do it right, it's so fun. If you do it wrong, it's very painful with the bleeds and such. It's a fun one, and I was glad to see it back, and I like the Necrotic Wake. I enjoy it. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So can we put it into the S?
Yeah, it's probably my favorite.
Yeah, same. I think that's probably one of the good dungeons this season. All right, so we're going to have an S dungeon. That's good. Next is Siege of Borealis. Now, I find this dungeon interesting in general. The bosses have interesting mechanics, interesting design, like with the first boss with the bombs, etc. The trash is innovative, but then there's the last boss, right? We talked about it already, but having this mandatory double the spell, and it's not even a boss, man. Like it's some tentacles, and then you kill more tentacles. Like, what is this? Like, for me, this is a huge deal breaker. Just the last boss alone, because it is also a long dungeon. It's at the end of the dungeon, so if people don't know what they're doing, you basically wipe on the last boss, and that
Yep.
feels really bad because you wasted all of this time. And that for me, it feels like very unfair. The last boss feels very unfair, very badly designed. And as I said, it's a huge deal breaker. Like if the last boss was not there, that would definitely be like a S or A dungeon for me. Like I would enjoy my time there. But I'm even avoiding this dungeon in many situations because of the last boss, and especially if I don't see a warlock in the group or something like that, because if I see a warlock, I'm a little bit more content into going in there. Although not all warlocks know how to dispel, but that's a
Yeah.
different topic,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So because of that, I would drop it down to like B, for example.
Okay.
I can't put it too high just because of the last boss. Although I kind of like the design of everything else.
Yeah. I hate this dungeon. I hate it.
Okay.
I hate the stupid rifle guys.
Oh yeah.
You're Harley wants to say hi, apparently. I
Hello.
think she needs to go out. Early. Let me take her out. I'm so sorry. 1 second.
That's fine.
She's like, I've been waiting here for 30 minutes.
All right.
I'm brushing her to keep her pacified, and it ain't working. Okay, come on, let's go. Be right back.
All right. See, even the dog didn't like Siege of Borales, guys. Even the dog didn't like Siege of Borales. So maybe B is way too high. Maybe we need to do it down to a C.
Yeah, so I that dungeon's rough. The rifle guys, buggy. I don't like the boss that jumps away and does the pop shot and then also jumps back and forth between the boat, and it's cool, but it's also just bizarre. I don't know. It's not. It's definitely. I don't avoid it, but I don't enjoy it. Um, inevitably you have enough percent by the time you get to the second to last boss, so you have an extra pack that's in the room when you're doing the fight. And there's always somebody, not always, but oftentimes, if the waves are not proper, people forget, and then they
Yeah.
pull the mobs, and then you wipe, and then they're over time. It's just like, and then the last boss, we don't need to beat that one to death. We already know how we feel about
Yeah.
that. So
And
yeah,
even
I
on
I
the
am
third boss,
not.
there's like an overlap with the waves on the sides and the front though. So if you
Oh yeah,
fight it long enough,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And not I can't stand that one.
All right. So I was saying B, but I guess you want to put it probably as low as D.
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
we probably meet in the middle, go like
All
C,
right.
but
I'm
it
fine with C, man. I'm fine with
yeah,
C. Like I don't mind the rifles and etc., but they are annoying. Even the pack that you have to fight just before the third boss area, because some people skip it if they know how to, right? Because they don't want to
yeah,
fight this pack. But if you fight it,
yep,
they don't know
yeah,
that the shooting is actually a frontal, so you
yeah,
can stack everything on your tank. But yeah, that's a different topic. I'm totally fine with C here. I'm totally fine with C. All right, Stone Vault. That is a very interesting dungeon to me because I actually love the design of everything. Like all the bosses, they're like the mechanics are very fun. I don't want to
mhm,
say fun. Like they're interesting to me. Like I like
yeah,
how designed them. I like how designed the trash as well. With some stuff that we haven't seen before. But at the same time, everything is extremely hard. Like all the bosses there, maybe the last boss is the easiest, but all the bosses there are very hard. They're very bug unfriendly because the first boss, okay, let's say that, but even there, like they need to know how to pop the pillars with the
yep,
arrows, right? Then
yep,
the second boss, the spell, let's say we're healers, so we're fine, but that's
yeah,
also a problem because in a bad bugs, your tank can actually get smacked. Like even on the
yeah.
first one,
Well,
they
and
can get one
low
shot.
keys, I
Yeah.
don't think healers know how to do the dispel. I'll be honest with you.
Also, that's another topic. Yeah. Then Skarmorak is just DPS sanity check because if they kill all the orbs at the same time, then there's no healing to that. So it's interesting design, but it's very hard and it's to execute correctly from a even DPS perspective. The machinist boss probably the hardest one. Once you learn how it works and you know to do the ranged interrupts and how to avoid stuff
Yeah,
on the sides, that's fine. But
yep,
it is extremely hard, especially in lower keys. And your tank can also die there if they don't know what to pop their defensives. It hurts a lot.
yep, yep,
So the trash is also innovative, but we like with the stacking and the dispelling stuff and the fears. But it's also very hard and annoying with the guys at the end as well. So if like in this from design perspective, I love it. I would give it an S. But when you have to play it and when you have to experience the dungeon, mainly because it's so hard, that takes away a little bit. Like I don't know if it was like a loot pinata and it was very easy. Maybe I don't know how we would feel about it then. But because it's that hard, I'm usually avoiding this dungeon in PUGs and I'm trying to stay away from it. So that kind of lowers my perspective and my grade. So I would put it probably somewhere between A and B. And again, it's from hardness perspective, I would even put it lower, but just because I kind of find the design interesting, I would up my grade a little bit.
I love this dungeon. It's probably my favorite of all of them. I think Necrotic Wake is really fun for me, but I love the healing mechanic of the first fight. I like the fact that DPS have to pay attention with the mechanic fight where they have to die at the same time, otherwise we're pretty much a wipe, especially if it's higher
Yeah.
keys. And the kick, the range kick, and understanding that, and you know, my shaman, I can just do it. But it's nice to see DP when I'm on my priest DPS doing it. Um, I like all the trash, the kicks, the fears. It's a very hard dungeon in Pugs, but I think it's a very it's an educational dungeon, and I think it's one of those dungeons where players start to realize they have abilities they maybe didn't know they had,
Yeah.
because you have to use them. Because the first hallway, look, tanks want to pull the whole thing because they saw somebody else do it, and the healer healed it, and they did it, and not realizing, you know, sometimes if you have a warlock and a mage in the same run, you're not going to have a ton of kicks. Things are going to be probably, especially if you don't have a shaman as a healer.
And then you don't have curse the spells.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you know, there's all this, you know, all these considerations when building, and a lot of times in low keys, people aren't aren't really thinking of the comp. They're just like, do we have battle res? Do we have lust? Okay, let's go. Um, so I think that that's the dungeon that kind of challenges people and helps players understand. Oh, maybe I need to press defensives on certain things, especially in the big AOE bosses. And so I like that dungeon. It's probably my favorite, even though it is one of the more challenging ones from a sense of um challenging. It's challenging in a way that's overcome, or it's you can overcome it if you play your character properly. So I really like Stone Vault. For me, it's like SA.
SA.
So
All right.
maybe
So
we do
I
A
would be
and
fine to put it into the A as well.
yeah,
I
okay.
can agree it's interesting, but the learning curve is way too steep, which is a problem for bugs. So where do we stick this? At the end of A, at the beginning of A? What's your take on this?
The beginning means it's higher, closer to S, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for me it's there, but you know, we can meet in the middle somewhere if you
All right, let's
want.
put it in between our current myths. I
Okay,
think
all right.
this is gonna be probably our most controversial pick here. I don't know if people are going to agree with this one, but let's see what they say in the comments below. Maybe they agree, maybe they not. All
Yeah,
right.
it's tough. I'm sure I'm not gonna
Oh,
be the
it's
fan
tough, man.
favorite on
Like
that
I
one.
even wiped because I was playing enhancement the last few weeks. Just started to enjoy this spec again, and the orbs on Skarmorak spawned, and they were close to each other. And you know, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna DPS the skull. They were cleaving a little bit, and then I got a Tempest proc. I pressed that button, all the orbs died. You
Oh
know, so
no.
I was like, oops, that might have been me, guys. I'm still learning. I'm new to enhancement. But yeah, you need to be even thinking how you're killing the orbs if they're close to each other. Because
Yep,
if you use
yep.
your regular skills, it's bad, right? All right, so one last dungeon, and I think that's an easy one to rank. But we've already talked about City of Threats, the extremely bad design with running around, the RP, and then on top of that, I think we can add that all the bosses are extremely hard. No exceptions there. Um,
Even the trash. Yeah.
Even the trash, but like the bosses are so much harder than the trash that you know, you kind of don't think about the trash when you mention City of Threats. But yeah, there's a lot of hard trash. Even the mini bosses before the last boss, it could be very problematic. So and then you're running around like an idiot. I would say this. When last season they introduced Murozon's Rise, I thought that this is like the most nonsense place of all Mythic Plus like dungeons ever. And I thought that they're never ever going to get close to that. And they didn't with City of Threads, but they tried, right? They
Yeah,
tried to
it's
get close
close.
to that. So for me, that's the easiest D ever.
Yeah.
Just because there's no lower tier here. Um, but yeah, do you think it's higher? Or you're a
No, it's
deep.
low. It's probably, is that the one that we said also in the previous screen that was like the one that had the least
Yeah,
amount of
yeah,
clears? Yeah, because you know, look, like think about the trash that knocks you back if people don't kick, right? And then you're hitting all those things that don't count for percent, and you have to kill all those. Like
yeah,
there's just that big beetle with the poison. If you don't have a poison
yeah,
cleanse, it's like it's really brutal. The RP for the bosses, the running around finding things, the teleporting things that knock you back to the beginning. I mean, God, man, it's a brutal dungeon, all the way from the beginning to the end. I mean, a couple times this week, today, I died going to the first track pack because the tank was just running. I just like it's a brutal dungeon,
Yeah.
and I do it a lot, but it's rough. Easy D for me for sure.
Okay. So I guess that concludes the tier list. And if you guys agree or disagree, let us know what are your takes in the comments below. Um, And do we have anything else to mention today? I had a section about talking about the balance and the meta, but I guess we can leave that to the episode where we're going to talk about the different healers and things like that. So maybe we can end up with some suggestions on what you can use in Mythic Plus in case of add-ons, and if you have some wild takes on what can make your journey a little bit easier, especially if you're pugging.
Yeah, I have a lot for the add-ons. Maybe too many. I mean, I think my UI is pretty clean. I'll maybe on another episode we can do kind of UI overhaul or just a UI what we're using. But I use a lot of one of the ones I use is there's a talent reminder uh, for dungeons because certain dungeons require certain things, and so I have a week or that tells
Yeah.
me, hey, you can keep this, maybe not use that. You absolutely need this. Make sure you redo it. I love that one because otherwise I forget, and who once the key starts, you got to run out, run in. It's annoying, right? So that's a big one.
Is that
As a healer,
for like all the healers or for a specific class?
any class at
You
all, it'll
can.
tell you, hey,
We're gonna link this in the description
yeah,
below because I
yeah,
created one for shaman and I think I have something for the paladin, but I don't have it for all the classes. And I think that's crucial because if you have the capability to get a certain dispel for a certain dungeon, that could help you a lot. But if you forget, then you're basically
yeah.
trolling. So
That's wasted.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I have a couple very specific. I'm a healer, right? Main, and it's like my priest can't handle certain things like bleeds and poisons, but I need to know that some of the players have it, and some of the default overlays don't show that, and so I have a couple weak cores that tell me indication that this person has a bleed, this person has a something you can't take, but it's important to make sure you focus heal. So I have some of that. I'm currently using Cell. Transitioning. I still, on a couple of my characters, I'm still using Voodoo because I haven't moved all the way over to Cell. But I like it. I like the absorbs, the way that it shows it. It's a pretty cool add-on. I was using Voodoo pretty exclusively before that.
yeah, same here.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So yeah, I mean the add-ons is big. I use a lot of weak ores, but I think I've cleaned up my UI. I have a very minimal, I would say, UI when it comes to yeah, my UI, and I like it. I just I've even this last week I've really started going through big wigs and removing a lot of the messages, some of the audible cues for things that aren't important to me, like the obvious things that are like frontals. I don't need to hear something for that. It's very obvious. And also clean up my timers because I don't need to know every single ability. So I've started to go through my big wigs to start removing things that aren't important for me, so that when I look at my timing week aura, I know the important things that are coming. So nothing like earth shattering. That's like if you get this week aura or this add-on, you're gonna win Mythic Plus.
yeah.
But there's a lot that can help improve, give you information that's minimal and kind of maybe help you in the long run. Tracking CDs of the your teammates is another big one for defensives. I use ability team tracker is one of the ones I use for that. So there's quite a few that I use that I have to have. How about you?
Yeah, Omni CD is something what I used to track the defenses of other people as well. So that's a good take. And yeah, one thing that I'll say is it's good to have all those things, but as you said, you're trimming some of the stuff that you're not interested in. So having way too many weak cores is bad. I think I was in that wagon at some point, and then I started trimming because I had too much stuff going on the screen. And I realized, yo, I have all those weak cars, and I'm not even looking into them, you know. So maybe if I delete these, my game is going to be running much smoother, which it did.
Mhm.
But yeah, so getting add-ons and weak cores and then customizing them to do whatever you need them to do for you and not what they're doing for other players, I think it's crucial. And then I'll add on top of that, I'm also using Cell. I transitioned from Voodoo as well. and I'm having a blast because it is highly customizable. It's much easier to work with compared to Voodoo, because the Voodoo interface was a little bit outdated, I think,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
still it is. I do have a video on how to set it up, by the way. It's one of the biggest videos on my channel, because you can use cell to track everything. Like, I don't need additional weak cores to know if somebody has a poison or disease and that. You can just use indicators from that add-on to track that, the absorb shields, etc. Right, and
Yeah.
it does a lot of things for me personally that Voodoo couldn't do, because you can on your frame you can assign which part goes where, right? And Voodoo had some
Yeah.
options to do that, but for example, it couldn't stack vertically of some of the
Yeah.
skills, and the
Yep.
interface was, even if you know how to work with it, you had to go to like a course to learn how to do it, right? Um,
University. Yeah. Voodoo
yeah,
University.
I'm a huge enjoyer of Cell. We'll put some links for that in the description as well, because I wholeheartedly recommend it. And then yeah, avoid having too much and customize everything to your liking. That's gonna take you a long way. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess we can end it here, because it's quite a lot of talking we did. We're gonna be back next week with the next episode, where we're gonna talk mainly about raids. So stay tuned for that. Any final words or shout outs?
Yeah. Omega Goddess is my guild. If you guys want to come hang out, feel free. We
Yeah.
Mythic Plus
And,
ready. Do you
and
are you in it? Will we? Do you raid, right?
I raid, but all right. So let's end with this story. I'm in a kind of weird situation because I'm in Europe, like this is where I live. But I play on the NA servers because I used to live into the United States. Yeah, there's many reasons, right? So I created my account on the US servers, and I don't want to create a new account on the EU servers now that I'm in Europe, because I have like 35,000 achievement points, right? I'm not, and I have like 800 melons collected, so I'm not starting from scratch, you know.
Nope.
I'm not starting from zero. I'd rather stop playing the game than start from zero, right? So I do play on US servers, but I raid with Australian guild, because the raid times, like the night raids in the US is when I'm asleep. So
Mhm.
I needed to. I used to raid with a morning raiding guild from the US, but they fell apart. That's gonna be something we're gonna talk about in the next episode. So
Yeah.
now I'm
Yeah.
raiding with a bunch of Australians. I'm having a blast, because they're fun people, and their raid times are aligning with my playing schedule quite nicely. But there's lag issues and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say shout out to Blizzard to combine the servers, and that border that we have between NA and Europe. I don't think it should be there, but that's another broad topic, I guess.
I have some contacts. Let me see if I could contact a couple of my friends. See if we could. I live in Southern California, so the Blizzard headquarters right down the street from my house. So
Yeah.
I got a couple buddies that work over there. I'll see what I can do for you.
Yeah, I think somebody brought this question up in one of the interviews, and I was very excited because this is something that I wanted to ask. And I
Yeah.
was very disappointed with the question, because they said something in the sort of, there's legal issues in doing that. Like, it's not that, and by the way, the servers, they can do that, because if you go into a tournament or PTR testing, you get people from like
Copy.
Europe, and you
Yeah.
see like
Copyrighted.
Cyrillic
Yeah.
language there, and the French and the German, etc.
Yep.
So they have already done this. Like, it's not
Yeah.
technical issue with
Yeah.
some of the excuses they had back in the day, or we called it this wrong, right? This is existing there in the game. So their excuse was, we have some legal borders that we have to pass through in order to make this work. But like, come on, man! Like, you're not the first person to face this problem. There are games that are facing these issues. Okay, I get it. The European Union, I can say a lot of bad things about, and they basically screw up the whole internet with their law stuff that you have to like have. I'm using
Yeah.
cookies on my website. Do you
Yeah.
accept
Yeah.
everything? Like, they
Yeah.
they they made a huge mess out of this, and I get this, but this is not something that should be used as an excuse, because they can definitely overcome this if they wanted to. There's different approaches. Even if I was like using like, if there's like some kind of separation of my US and EU accounts, but they're, at least I shared the achievements and everything, right? Even if I cannot play the characters to the other place, that would be something that is going to be huge for me. But unfortunately, it's not.
Oh man. Well, maybe one day. Hopefully, we'll
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Hopefully,
They're working
well,
on
it was
it.
a pleasure.
So
Yeah, yeah. We'll see. We'll see.
yeah.
Blizzard. If if it charges you $100, they'll probably do it. I bet you they'll.
But no, that's the other thing. I cannot. You can transfer between servers, change your character's name, race, etc. But you cannot charge from the US to the EU account. Like even
Crazy.
that's not an
So,
option. You know.
so
So
hard. Yeah.
I'm basically stuck there. Like I'm not complaining because I'm having fun with the people that I'm playing with. But even like because I know people from Europe. Like I'm in Europe right now. I have friends who play the game and they play on US servers, and I cannot play with them. And I don't
Yeah.
have this option. So why is this border there? Like, let us play the game.
That's internet. Come on.
I
Yeah.
haven't mentioned this before, like in videos and stuff, because I think I'm kind of like a snowflake. I don't think there's many people like me who are like playing in the wrong region. Like, what did you do, man? Why are you playing in the wrong region? But yeah, here I am. That's me. And
But there is. I used to raid with a guy that was from gosh, I can't remember the name of the country. He's one of our tanks, and one of my good friends now was he's Italian, and he sometimes plays on you. He has two accounts because he'll go back and forth. Sometimes he'll play EU, and then he'll come here and play NA. And it's unfortunate because you know, like you said, you got mounts, you got titles, you got things like that, and you want to have all that, but you know he has two whole accounts for that, which is a lot to maintain. So it's unfortunate because it's totally
yeah,
separate.
I thought about this, but like I'm devoting a lot of time to this game. But if I'm to maintain two separate accounts, because I have to like level all the characters there, and then I have to
Yeah,
gear
pay
them
for it
again and
too.
get the IO, like that's basically going to be double the time that I'm playing right
Yeah,
now if I want to maintain two accounts, and that's
yep,
not plausible for me. That's
yeah,
also impossible. So it's
yeah.
just not an option. Yeah, I thought that's gonna be a topic for a different episode, but here we go. We mentioned it
We
here.
flip it. We flip
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's cool.
So
Well,
it,
thanks again for your time. Yeah, it's always a
yeah,
pleasure.
I would
Love.
be interested to see if anybody else has takes on this and they're feeling like they're playing on
I
the
don't
wrong
think you're by
region. But
yourself.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think you're
maybe,
by yourself.
maybe. It's good to know. All right. Thank you very much, guys, for being with us on this podcast. We'll see you in the next episode. Now, get
Thanks,
out of
everybody.
here and take care.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.